What's going on, everyone? Happy Saturday, happy weekend, and welcome to a very special primetime edition of the Winged Eagle podcast coming up here on a Saturday evening instead of a Saturday afternoon. At least it's evening on the East Coast. It's about 9 p.m., 6 p.m. here on the West Coast, and I do not have to be at work tonight. My duties are finished for the day, so I am here with you guys, and I'm glad that I have some time because we have a loaded episode. There's just tons of news to get into. Lots of random things, plus an enormous week of just like wrestling results. Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Lots of big things going down. New champions crowned. Setups for future pay-per-views coming up. We've got some WWE releases to discuss. Conor McGregor just got arrested. We had a very eye-opening interview conducted by Chris Van Vliet with Andrew Yang that we're going to discuss. And we're going to talk about Miro's debut in AEW, and we're going to thoroughly discuss something that I've been talking about a little bit on Twitter the past couple of days. A lot of the arguments that AEW is WWE cast-offs and some people's opinions pertaining to how the former WWE wrestlers cut promos on AEW. We're going to discuss a lot of that. We're going to discuss a lot of the history of the business as well. I haven't been arguing with anybody online or anything like that. I've just been stating opinions. And thanks to Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret, who shot me a retweet. I've got all sorts of traffic on this one tweet. So I thought it would make a fun subject to discuss later on, and we get into the AEW Dynamite results, talking about Miro and all of that. We'll dive into that. That should be a fun little spirited debate we'll have here. Not a rant or anything angry. We're just going to talk about it and try to talk about it logically, like adults. I know it's a crazy concept for the IWC. First of all, can I be heard and seen? Yeah, we good. We good. I'm going to say hello to everybody here in the chat in just a minute, knock out the early super chats. We'll shout out some patrons, and we'll start getting into the news and all the stuff here because we have so many results to get through or get into. We got a loaded Raw that's coming up Monday that we have to at least discuss. And like I said, new champions crowned. We had some debuts. Very interesting SmackDown last night. Very interesting trade today with Mandy Rose heading over to Raw and what that could mean. I think it's kind of funny. It really means nothing because they're in the same city or in their same building. Like if you get traded from Raw or SmackDown, it's like not like Mandy and Otis can't see each other anymore. They're still in Orlando, living in the same house, doing the same shit. Now, if they were traveling, that might be a different story, but I thought it was funny that everybody was freaking out like, oh, is Otis going to be okay? I'm like, they're still going to be together. At least one would think. But it's definitely making us think and getting our wheels spinning a little bit as to what the future of the Money in the Bank briefcase is going to be, and I think that'll be fun to discuss later because they're clearly gearing up for some sort of a match or something to go down with that briefcase. And we kind of suspected all along that Otis would not be the one that would cash it in, and that looks like it's becoming more and more clear as some more of these little twists and turns in the storyline are happening. So we'll be getting into all that. Some Alexa Bliss news from last night. Bayley cut a really good promo, I thought. Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, I think it's going to be interesting, and I think Roman Reigns has a really good chance to get over as a mega huge heel at Clash of Champions, much in the same way. Well, Austin didn't need to get over. The fans took a little while to get used to Austin, but I remember the one show that did it was when he destroyed Jim Ross, like on SmackDown. That was fine. Like in Oklahoma, that was finally when the fans were like, okay, this guy's a dick. And I think if Roman Reigns rips the head off of his cousin and leaves him in a bloody pool at Clash of Champions, that could solidify him. And I'm liking this new Roman, so we're going to talk a lot about that as well. Dynamite was pretty loaded this week. NXT was pretty loaded this week. And we got a brand new Firefly Fun House character. What'd y'all think of the Walrus? All that and more in this episode. Hello to everybody that's here in the chat. Let me just say hi to Barry, who's hanging out from Hawaii. What's up, dude? Appreciate the $2. Would you let Jim Ross borrow your toothbrush? No, I probably wouldn't let him do that. There was a joke that Bobby Heenan told, or maybe it was Jerry Lawler. They said that the toothbrush was invented in Alabama. You want to know how I know that? Because if it was invented anywhere else, it would be called the teeth brush. I've always liked that joke. Reminded me of that. But thanks, Barry, for the $2. Joey G, thanks for the 5. Hey, Greg, big debate between me and my buddies. Who would win, the FTR or the Hollywood Blondes? Oh, man. Different type of teams. Oh, man, I'm going to talk about the Hollywood Blondes later, actually. I have them in my notes to discuss in a comparison. I don't know. Shit. I think Tully and Arn would beat the Hollywood Blondes. I don't know if FTR would. Damn, Joey G. I don't know. I'm picking Hollywood Blondes. I have to. I'm in my 40s. Devlin Husband, good to see you too as well. Appreciate the 5. Hey, Greg. great timing. Just got back home from picking up a new sofa. Damn, new cars, new sofa. Nice. Hope all is well. Yeah, we're doing well here. We're doing okay, I should say. And I got a little dedication that I'm going to say here in a minute before we get into the news and everything. And I just want to knock out these first. You Watt M8. Appreciate the $5, dude. Hello, Mr. Good Mic Work. I hope you're having a good day. I really enjoy your content. Cheers. Well, thank you very much for stopping by. And if you are here and you are not a subscriber, make sure you do that. Keep us climbing with the subscribers and all that good stuff. And Icy Hardaway, welcome back, and I appreciate your $5 drop as well. One of my favorite parts of wrestling as a kid is when I would see wrestlers jump between WCW, ECW, and WWF. I guess that's not cool amongst fans anymore. No, it's cool amongst them. They just get to pick and choose which ones are acceptable and which ones are not. And I think a lot of the, like as we're going to discuss later, a lot of these arguments to AEW is really a way of just masking their contempt for AEW. They don't like the promotion. They actually want to see it fail. And they use this as ammunition when you really examine it and look at it in terms of the history of the business. Some of the biggest offenders of this, like TNA, you know, who hung on every word of WWE, who reacted to every single thing they're doing. AEW is not even close, you know, to the worst offenders in terms of people jumping ship and talking shit about the other company. So it's like a dual-sided debate. Some people feel like AEW has too many former WWE stars, but as we'll talk about later, they don't when you compare them to everything else. And then on the other side of that coin, do they need to go and talk shit about the WWE? Well, it depends on the situation, you know, and if they're frustrated from a creative standpoint and they're a victim of that broken system, then yes, I would want to vent that frustration too. Just go watch Stone Cold, watch Steve Austin before he was Stone Cold, watch all of his promos in ECW. Some of them were 30 minutes long, trashing WCW, Monday Night Quill, dressing up as Hogan, talking about Dusty and Bischoff and how he was jerked around creatively, just like Rusev was. Rusev got himself over, just like the Hollywood Blondes did. But they weren't supposed to get over, so what happened? They got squashed and taken away from them. Neither one of them exceeded U.S. title. Never won a world title. They had plans for them that were changed. They had a job in seconds on major pay-per-views with Rusev jobbing to Randy Orton, Steve Austin jobbing to Hacksaw Jim Duggan in like 5 seconds. They were treated like shit, and they were a victim of that fucked up political BS that goes on backstage, and they're very, very, very similar. So Rusev's very short promo on Wednesday, shitting on the glass ceiling in the imaginary brass ring, that's not even so bad. It's not like he talked for 10 minutes. It's not like he talked for 15 minutes or an hour. He just had like 2 lines of dialogue saying, fuck you, WWE, I'm elite now. And I don't see why that's so bad. I think it's an empty criticism, is all it is. Rusev will get himself over. He did in WWE. He's proven that he's got charisma. He's hilarious. He's fun to watch. He'll do wonders for them. So it's not a matter of just signing anybody that used to work for WWE. TNA, I think, was guilty of that, but AEW is not. Let me kill my cat real quick. Hey, get out of here before he does something to us. So anyway, all that's going to be discussed later on. That's just a little teaser of some of the opinions that I want to give out later, because I just think when you really look at it, it's not that bad. And when you compare the amount of wrestlers that are in AEW that used to be in WWE compared to the amount that are not, it's not as unbalanced as you might think. So we'll look at it. We'll try to look at it logically. That's all we're doing. It's not based on any bias. It's just based on truth. Anywho. Is that it for the supers? George Morris, I got one from you. Good to see you. Hey, Greg, how are you? Looking forward to Super Mario 3D All-Stars and WWE 2K Battlegrounds this Friday, and miserable Paul Steed be safe. I don't play video games like modern ones, so I don't even know what Mario 3D is. The last Mario game I played was Super Mario World on the SNES. Super Nintendo, that's it. I played a Wii version because I did have a Wii in the house like 10 years ago, and there was one there that I played a little bit, but never played the 64 versions or the 3Ds, and now I'm so far behind. I'm 30 years behind in Mario games, so I'm not the right guy to ask. I suck at games, but I wish I knew more about games because the wrestling and gamer world overlap dramatically, and I feel like I'm missing out on a big chunk of potential subscribers if I just knew something about video games, but I don't. And good to see you as well, Dan Price. All right, I think that gets all the pleasantries out of the way. Will be interesting to see what kind of an audience we have in here later on tonight, because I'm going up at a different time, strange time. And like I said, my schedule is all over the place. Now, I want to just open up here and do a really quick tribute and dedicate this September 12th, 2020 edition of the Winged Eagle podcast to my grandmother, Violet, who passed away this morning. I had mentioned to you guys about a week ago that she was on her deathbed and on her way out, and I let you guys know that I might have to change up video schedules this week depending on what happens. She did pass away this morning. it's okay. I'm totally mentally prepared for this. She was a very old lady. She died at 96 years old, and she literally died of old age. She declined. We brought her here from Florida. She was living by herself in Florida, moved her out here to the West Coast because she was incapable of living on her own anymore, and put her in a really nice, retirement facility. But, she declined quickly, to the point where she couldn't no longer walk. Then she had to be confined to a wheelchair. Then she could really not get out of bed. And then she went into hospice. And then, as 4 years went by, she slowly declined and didn't even die of anything specific. She just stopped. So we've been waiting for it the past couple of nights, went and said my goodbyes and all that kind of stuff. She was an awesome grandmother. She took care of me when I was a kid, when I was really young, because even though I had a great life and a great childhood, it didn't start out so great. And there were some rough times there when I was little. So she took care of me every day while my mom went to work, and she worked in the hospital. And she would take care of me every day, cook me breakfast, and we really bonded. And as I got older, even though there's multiple grandsons, or grandchildren, I should say, she openly and unapologetically liked me the best, to the point where she would even tell the other grandkids that Greg was the favorite. And so we had that kind of bond there. She took care of me, and she was kind of like a second mother for a little while. But I am no way, it's very, very sad, but this is not devastating. This is exactly what she wanted and needed. She needed to be at peace. She did not have a good last couple of years. It's a very bad quality of life when you live that old and you can't do anything for yourself. You can't dress yourself. You can't go to the bathroom. You can barely move. It's no way to live. So in a lot of ways, it's a blessing. So just hug your loved ones, and if you have grandparents, just make sure you see them as much as you can, because they won't be here. And that was my last one. I lived into my mid 40s to still have a living grandmother. It was pretty cool. So that's all of them now. And I've had a big family, because I've had stepdads and things like that. And I've actually had 4 grandfathers and 3 grandmothers spread across the big family of mine. And they're all gone now. That was the final one. And so in the last 18 months, I've lost both of my remaining grandmothers and my father. So it's been a rough year and a half in terms of family deaths and things like that. But in my grandmother's case, we're just happy she's at peace, because it was long overdue and she was ready. So anyway, Grandma, love you. This podcast is dedicated to you. I will do my best to watch my language. And I appreciate all of the kind words that are flying into the chat right now. But anyway, we got to get into business. Talk about the news, all that good stuff. Before I do that, I want to shout out all of the active patrons right now on the Patreon page, like Apron Bump Podcast, Alan Carter, Scotty Cura, Brandon Yelverton, Michael Tong, Nick Musser, K-Dog's Kennel, Ryan Y, Devlin Husband, Steve Myers, the Double ZTV, John Redifer, Claudio Clavedetcher, Jordan Carr, Daniel Rodriguez, Barry MK, Josiah Blevins, Mr. Steve, Scott Moss, Domanian Ewell, John Riffle, Michael Cuomo, Naveed, Keith Salyers, Nathan Walker, Alex Reynolds, and Blake Moran. Thanks, guys. You're the best. I appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, you can always head over to Patreon and make a minor pledge. Every little bit helps, and it keeps the channel rolling. And thank you to all of you that have been here for so long. I've got the top patrons and the top benefactors listed down below in the description as well. If you have a $10 a month or more pledge, or you've pledged $200 or more lifetime, I'll shout you out in the description down there as well, for being a reason that this channel is moving along. Anyway, I really debated with myself what I was going to talk about here first, because there's like a million things. Do I talk about Finn Balor? Do I talk about Miro? Do I talk about last night's SmackDown? What the hell do we talk about? Let's just casually start dipping our toes into the water, and we'll get into the news first, because there's only a little bit that I wrote down to discuss. It was kind of a busy news week, but nothing that, I could have talked about a bunch of minor things, but this podcast is loaded enough, so I tried to keep it to the big issues only. As I'm drinking a delicious Stella here on Saturday night. But we had another little chunk of WWE releases this week, and 3 notable names coming out of that. Number 1 being Gerald Briscoe, who has been with WWE ever since Black Saturday. It's been a long time since he's been there, and he released on Twitter. He put a statement out saying that he got a call from Vince McMahon himself, saying that his services were no longer required, after all these years. And he seems fine with it. I don't know what he was really doing in this stage other than, collecting a small paycheck and, being on the side as a consultant. I don't think he was on the road full time with them. And I think he was mostly just kind of freelancing or something like that. And he probably has some sort of, minor deal that, gets him a cut of money weekly or monthly or whatever. So he is officially gone from WWE. That is an end of an era. He has been there a long time, and he had some, his most memorable stuff as a wrestler didn't take place in WWE, but as an executive, and in the 90s there, the Stooges with Pat Patterson, nobody can ever forget that. And, he kind of did play himself. I wouldn't go so far as to call him a stooge. but he was definitely Vince's right-hand man and usually had his back in most situations. And I know Briscoe had Vince's back in that screw job, the Montreal screw job. He was one of the guys that was out there, to protect Shawn. If you go back and watch that, him and Triple H are the first ones out there, and they whisk Shawn right out of there. And you can see Gerald being like, just keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving. Just get him out of there. He was loyal to Vince. So, again, it's a little bit, we're going to talk about that a little bit with the Van Vliet interview. It's a little bit, disconcerting when you see this company that's got so much money and, to not keep somebody like that on is kind of a bummer, but, he did have a good run there. I'm sure he's financially doing fine and he'll be all right. And it sounds like he's got some other plans. He said, hey, I got a big announcement coming in a few days. Stay tuned type of thing. So it's not the last we've seen of Jerry Briscoe, but it definitely is an end of an era in the WWE. Mike Rotundo was also let go, which is interesting because he's the father of Bray Wyatt. And in the Fun House last night, Devil Vince even threatened to fire Bray Wyatt, which was kind of interesting since his dad was let go like the same damn day. And also the trainer and I think a producer, Sarah Stock, was also let go. So those are some of the bigger names, but the releases keep coming now that they're kind of confined to the Thunderdome, and I don't know, when it's going to be that things will ever resume back to normal in WWE. Probably going to be a while. So they've continued to release people, and sometimes it feels like they shouldn't do that, but that's what they're doing, and that's what they have the right to do, I guess. This just came across, right before I went live here, I saw this story about Conor McGregor. We'll talk about it because it's UFC. He was arrested in Corsica. This is a statement from AFP Sports. It says here that McGregor was initially arrested by police for indecent exposure, but an update provided a short time later would reveal that the retired UFC fighter was arrested for attempted sexual assault and sexual exhibition. So who knows what this fucking fool was doing? I don't even want to know, exposing himself and assaulting people and exhibition. I don't even want to question what that could be. It's gross regardless, and I just want to talk about it because I hate Conor McGregor. I think he's an asshole, and I'm glad that he's arrested. Unfortunately, he's a tough dude, so nobody's going to mess with him in prison, but I'm sure it will be extremely uncomfortable in there for him, considering all the money he makes if he does get convicted of anything here and has to spend some time in a lockup. I don't know. Pretty disgusting story if any of these allegations are true. Pretty effed up, but I'm not surprised because the dude's a douchebag. Anyway, we'll move on from there. Wanted to definitely talk about the Andrew Yang interview that Chris Van Vliet was able to land earlier this week. Now, this was really interesting. It's only about 20 minutes long. You can check it out on YouTube. And as we know, Andrew Yang was very vocal on Twitter last week as it pertains to WWE and how it classifies their employees and how it classifies and treats independent contractors. And this, of course, was in the light of the big news that came out about WWE telling its talent, you cannot use Twitch and Cameo. You cannot use your stage names on those platforms to make side money. And at the time, the way the language was written in that statement, it didn't really clarify if you can use your real names or not. Now, we had all assumed, a lot of people were saying, okay, what they're probably saying here is they don't want Sasha Banks to go on Twitch by Sasha Banks. If she's going to be on Twitch, she needs to be going by her real name, not trying to capitalize or exploit off the name of her character. So in legal terms, WWE, that's almost understandable. But it also seems a little bit excessive and a little micromanaging, and it should be something that if you want to classify these wrestlers as independent contractors, shouldn't really be all that legal, but at least it's pertaining to the WWE names and their intellectual property. So you can argue, okay, fine, that's okay. But they weren't very clear about that at first, were you, WWE? So once that clarification kind of came out, then we understood it a little bit better. But it brought up a lot of other questions about, the lines are kind of blurred there between character and person. And not only online, but in the Andrew Yang interview, they brought up examples, and one of the things they talked about was the character Belle from Beauty and the Beast, or any sort of TV character or movie character. You see them in the airport. Yeah, I forgot. I never saw Beauty and the Beast. He said Emma Watson. Am I right about that? So if you're in the airport and you see Emma Watson, you're not going to look at her as Belle from Beauty and the Beast. You're not going to see her as Belle from Beauty and the Beast, unless maybe you're like a kid who sees her, mommy, look, that's Belle. But an adult is going to be like, oh, no, that's the actress Emma Watson. It's not like that in WWE. If you see Big E at the airport, you're going to say, holy shit, that's Big E. You're not going to say, holy shit, that's your whatever his name is. I don't even know. Is it Langston? Something like, I'm not even sure. So you're not going to, but that's my point. WWE wrestlers are viewed differently. Yes, they're portraying a character, but it's not the same as a movie character, because in most cases, you call the actor by their name. You call Tom Hanks and John Travolta by their names, not by the characters they played in movies, because they play lots of different characters in movies. Where in WWE, you're playing one character, it becomes a part of you, and that's kind of where it gets a little bit tricky. Yes, WWE has the right to say, AJ Styles, you can't be AJ Styles on Twitch, but I think that's a little bit excessive and kind of unnecessary, because even if they say something that, because that statement was, had all that, protecting the brand nonsense in there, what does it matter what the name is? The fans see AJ Styles, the fans see Big E, the fans see Bayley and Sasha Banks as those people. So if they just have a different name in their username of their Twitch profile, but then they say something that's harmful to the company, it's not going to change anything. Like, it's still going to get heat on the company, regardless of what name they're using. So this idea of like, oh, we don't want you to say you've got COVID or something like that. I'm like, what's the difference? What's the difference if Renee Young says she's got COVID or Renee Paquette says she has COVID? What's the fucking difference? Fans know who she is. It's just a silly thing to control, and it's another reason why I think it's drawing a lot of attention to their classifications of independent contractors. They shouldn't be able to control your life to this degree. Now, this caught the attention, like we said, of Andrew Yang. He had a lot of things to say about that on Twitter and said that, hey, if I have a chance to, I will definitely look into this and try to create some change here. And this maybe could be it. I mean, Jesse Ventura tried this 30 years ago, and Vince has always been able to stamp out unionization and things like that. Who knows? We might be, on the verge of, some big changes about how wrestling is run. So the interview that he had with Chris was pretty eye-opening as well, because he elaborated a lot more. And he talked about the injustice of how WWE classifies and treats its wrestlers. And he proposes things like, health insurance, maternity leave, an off-season or recovery time. Maybe an off-season wouldn't work, but recovery time. Things like that protect the wrestler a little more, to where they don't have to break their backs in order to make that living that they're trying to make. And, they're treated like, they're just put through the ringer in terms of travel and how hard they work and how they're just constantly on the move, and they have no, personal or quality of life at all. And they're paid handsomely for this, but at the same time, they're completely controlled to where they can't do anything. A lot of times they can be held hostage by the company underneath these contracts. It takes them forever to get out, like FTR and Brody Lee and a lot of other people that were like, just get me the F out of here type of thing, but they won't, out of spite. All that stuff, is just a mess. And this is no like dummy, Andrew Yang, trust me, I wish on November 3rd, I was going and vote for him instead of Biden. I much would have preferred that. I liked him as a candidate. I thought he was great. So he's a smart dude, and he's a wrestling fan. He was shouting out all sorts of people. Said his favorite wrestler was Macho Man Randy Savage. He loved Hulk Hogan, Ricky Steamboat, Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, the British Bulldog. And he even gave a shout out to the fake Diesel and fake Razor Ramon. This guy even knew who they were, because that's kind of an interesting look there at the intellectual property argument, is that everybody knew that Nash and Hall were the ones that made the Razor and Diesel characters, and when you just recast them, it doesn't work out. So the wrestlers are much more tied to their characters than Hollywood or TV actors are, and that's kind of the whole argument here of what WWE is doing. Is it really cool or not, or are they taking it a little bit overboard? And that's why I mentioned the stuff about the actors and actresses and stuff. But he had a great answer too when Van Vliet asked him. He said, well, what about the people that say, well, they signed the contracts, so they should have known what they were in for? And he's right. They're right about that. But he also points out that there's a very uneven bargaining table there. The talent probably feels like they really don't have a choice. This is their one opportunity. This is the biggest wrestling company in the world. This is the pinnacle. This is where you want to be. And so they can pretty much put anything in front of you in writing. Hey, we're going to control. You have to call Vince McMahon on the phone first before you take a shit. And you have to say, well, I guess I got to do that then. That's going to be annoying, but I'll do it because that's my own. That's just, they got you by the balls, basically. So, he's kind of proposing here, changing that and trying to get away from talent signing their life away to a bunch of unfair shit in a contract that just allows complete control, allows them to do very little and allows the company to do whatever they want to them. And that's unfair. And we've been hearing about that for years. It's not like this is a new issue. We've always known this. we've always known this is a fucked up part of the WWE and how much money they make and how they could implement a lot of these things if they wanted to. They just choose not to. And he says, Yang says, he goes, the problem is, he goes, there's a National Labor Relations Board that handles this type of stuff, but they're all Trump appointees. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to do anything to harm the WWE when they're in bed with them like that. So he said, if this administration changes over and he's in a position to do anything about this, he's going to. So WWE better hope that doesn't happen, because they could be headed for some serious change here. And honestly, it would be for the better in terms of the workers and things like that. When you look back at wrestling and see how many people and how many wrestlers have, passed away, yes, they're responsible for their own actions, but the business, really drove them into that, drug addiction and all the other stuff that they wind up getting themselves into. That's why they die at such a high rate. All that stuff can really slow down if just wrestlers are treated better, and they've got a little bit more, they got a little more say in their own lives, and they can, they can pitch for things, and they can get their insurance, and they can have maternity leaves and all these things that they should already be getting. Because aside from being injured in the ring, you're on your own, for health insurance and all of that. And that's kind of not right, considering they're borderline celebrities, and they don't have this stuff. Even actors have that with the Screen Actors Guild and all that. So it's just messed up. And hopefully, this will start changing things. He had some good things to say about AEW as well, based on the AEW wrestlers that he's talked to. He said a few of them have reached out to him and said they like the environment backstage. I can imagine they do. I don't think business-wise AEW is really doing a whole lot different than WWE in terms of how they're classifying the wrestlers, but they definitely have a little bit more freedom. As we've seen, they even poked fun at WWE's shit there. Was it Kip Sabian who plugged his Twitch, and then it says, AEW approves this message or whatever? So he said he's talked and been in contact with some wrestlers there that just say it's a much more pleasant and much more stress-free, or more stress-free, or less stressful, I should say, environment than WWE. And, they're not, there's probably a few things they could be doing differently as well, but overall, it seems like the talent from a mental standpoint is happy there, where it looks like the WWE's, broken system really can drive people crazy sometimes. So it's good to see this kind of brought up. I hope it doesn't go away. I hope it doesn't get forgotten about or swept under the rug or whatever. I hope this is something that, more people in government pay attention to, and finally they're saying, no, you're not going to get away with this. It's been 40 years, enough's enough. Time for you guys to change things. And guess what? You can afford it. So we'll see. But it was a very interesting interview. If you haven't seen it, just go online, check it out. It's on YouTube right now on Chris's channel, and it's a good listen, or a good watch. Let's jump into WWE first. We'll talk about Raw and SmackDown. I just want to preview Monday's Raw real quick, but before I do that, let me cruise up and make sure I got no more supers coming in. I got a couple. Hey, Antoine, what's up? $10. Listen, this was purely because the Superstars was using the platform to talk about WWE creative and shooting on backstage things they didn't want to get out. I don't blame WWE overreacting, but I understand. Oh, I got you. You're talking about the Twitch and Cameo stuff. Yeah, I get that, but if they're allowed to use their real names, why can't they just do it? What does changing the name do? If even if they did have frustrations, somebody that currently works for WWE, they said something on Twitch, they're not using their wrestler name, they're using their real name, the news sites are still going to pick up on it and then report it as the real name. AJ Styles, not Allen or whatever his name is. AJ Styles says this about WWE creative. To me, limiting their use of the name changes nothing really in terms of how it's going to be reported. Maybe if they just didn't do shitty backstage things, they wouldn't have to worry about these things get out. Basically, they want to treat people like shit and then say, no, don't tell anybody we treated you like shit. Fuck you, WWE. I understand their position too. I actually do, or at least their side of it, at least what they think in their head. I understand why they think they need to do this. And, like I said, as long as they're not preventing them from being on the platform at all, because that's a huge, violation of fucking rights there. But as long as they're not doing that, then I'm okay with whatever they do. I just find it silly and unnecessary. And regardless of what your Twitch handle is, you're still gonna be heard. Your voice is still gonna be heard. Doesn't change anything. But appreciate you being here too, Antoine. Devlin, another one. What's up? Appreciate the $5. While I do not agree on his policies, mad respect for Andrew Yang. I love seeing him stand up for wrestlers. Yeah, anybody that stands up for wrestlers. It doesn't matter which side of the political fence you're on. If somebody speaks up and say, hey, these guys are treated like shit, you're not going to see anybody on the other side of that fence saying that, because, don't give a shit about businesses and things like that, and the employees and the welfare of the workers and stuff like that. It's going to take someone like a Yang. And plus, Vince doesn't want to change anything. He's worked so hard to make sure that, they have to pay as little as possible to keep their company going, and it's a little bit disgusting. And so, yeah, anybody that steps up, anybody, regardless of who it is, I'm going to be like, right on. I'm on your side, man. Wish more people would, on both sides of politics. It would be nice if enough people took notice to this. Once some of the other world problems have kind of gone away, and they said, you know what, we got to change this. Let's all get together and say, nope, no more of that. Vince, you got to change your ways. But anyway, let's move on to wrestling news and results and all that stuff. Wrestling, Monday Night Raw, this Monday. It's a big episode. They're stacking it for some reason. The rating last Monday was not very good. We had a pretty good main event and stuff, which they're doing again. We got Seth Rollins and Dominic taking on each other again. We've got the champion versus champion challenge match or whatever with Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro taking on the Street Profits. That'll be on Monday. Asuka's defending the women's title against Mickie James. That'll also be on Monday. And just announced, I think today or yesterday or something, Drew McIntyre taking on Keith Lee. Now, this is a match that I knew would happen at some point, even with them being friends and baby faces and all that. But them doing it now on Monday is kind of interesting. Drew McIntyre, we weren't even sure in kayfabe if he was really 100% or able to compete after 3 punts and a fractured jaw and a melting brain and everything else that was happening to him as a result of what Randy Orton did. He showed back up last week and murdered Randy Orton in response, and now he's going to have a match with Keith Lee. I can only assume that Randy Orton will stick his head into that and will get a DQ or a non-finish there, I guess. And of course, Randy Orton is set to face McIntyre for the title again at Clash of Champions. So on paper, it looks like a loaded show, even though I don't understand why we're doing Seth and Dominic again. But other than that, maybe we can be in for something decent on Monday night. We'll see. Let's talk about last night's SmackDown real quick, because there was a few interesting spots here, or portions of the show. And one of the big ones is the match coming up for the Universal title at Clash of Champions. Roman Reigns defending against Jey Uso, who won that match last week to earn the opportunity. So Roman opens up the show with Paul Heyman, I believe, right? Heyman cuts his promo and does his thing. I'm still liking the quieter, more soft-spoken, not soft-spoken, the quieter, silent kind of killer version of Roman Reigns. He stands there a lot, doesn't move, doesn't change his facial expressions a whole lot, lets Paul Heyman do most of the talking. Jey Uso comes out, and they're kind of playing Jey Uso off here, and it's kind of weird based on like who the Usos are, and those kind of like street-type characters they had last time with the rapping and everything. You think those guys would have a little bit of street smarts, or they'd have a little bit, better instincts than maybe most people. And the fact that Jey Uso is so clueless that he doesn't seem to understand quite what he's dealing with here. He's coming out, he's still under this mentality that that's his brother or it's his cousin, that's his blood, and he talks about that, man, I'm just excited to have a chance to compete for the Universal title against my blood. And Roman's kind of standing there, and even Jey Uso thanks him, and Roman's like, you ain't got to thank me, and you're like, oh, shit, Jey doesn't quite get it here. And the two of them are interrupted by Baron Corbin and Sheamus, who come out, and Uso they let him run their mouth for a bit, and Uso attacks him, and while there's this, 2-on-1 brawl with Corbin and Sheamus and Uso, Roman is just standing there, doing nothing. I have a bug in my head. Roman's just standing there, doing nothing. He's just kind of watching, not getting involved. And the two powder out, and we set that tag match up for later on in the night. And I wrote it down here, but I can't remember if I think this was the main event, right? And it was Roman and Jey Uso taking on Sheamus and Baron Corbin. Now, Jey had to take on the two of them by himself for the beginning part of the match, because Roman, much like he did in the payback match, he didn't show up. So he's out there letting Jey do all the work by himself. And finally, at the end of it, right when Jey is about to eat a bro kick from Sheamus, Roman's music hits. He comes out there. Jey fights back. He winds up getting on the top rope, and by then, Roman is on the ring apron, and he just kind of softly blind tags himself in. And Jay's like, oh, okay. He gets in the ring. He spears Sheamus and pins him, gets the win for his team, and does none of the work. And after that, Uso still doesn't seem to quite understand that this is a different Roman Reigns. They even go up to the stage, and Uso kind of raises Roman's hand, and you can just see this look of disgust. He's like looking at him like, he's like, oh man, dude, I can't stand you or whatever. And Uso seems to not quite understand this. So what I think they need to do here, if you ask me, like I talked about at the top of the podcast, is you need to have an absolute murder take place at Clash of Champions. Whether it's in the match itself or if Roman just goes out there and squashes Uso much like Brock did to Kofi. But after the win, you continue the attack. After the win, you get a chair. You bloody him up. I don't know what the status of Jimmy Uso's injury is. I forgot even what the injury is. I think it's a knee. And I don't know what he can do, if he can even hobble out there, if he can walk at all. If you could get him out there as well, and you can have Roman just beat the shit out of both of them. Let's see some blood. Let's see some carnage. Let's see, like I said earlier, kind of a similarity between what Austin did to Jim Ross in Oklahoma. Right after he turned heel, it's like it wasn't working quite at first. And WWE's like, we got to do something extreme. What if we absolutely destroy Jim Ross in front of his hometown crowd? That might do it. And it definitely got some boos. So I think that is absolutely what needs to be done here with whatever they do in the Roman and Jey Uso match. This needs to be just an easy opponent fed to Roman. He'll dispose of him pretty quickly, or he will just torture him throughout the whole match, beat him bloody, and then pin him. But I think it would be more fun to beat him quickly and then fuck him up something good with weapons and chairs and tables and whatever else Roman can find, and show that he does not care whether it's blood or anything. Nobody's going to stand in his way, even if it's his own family. And Paul Heyman will do an excellent job of conveying that message to the audience, especially the following SmackDown if something like that goes down. Here is a man right here who does not get, kind of thing. You let Paul Heyman tell that story, that Roman is a killer and he will smash anybody, even his own flesh and blood. I mean, if you want to really, I already think this Roman is just light years better than the previous Roman in terms of a heel, but you still need that one thing. I think you still need that one thing to really say, oh shit, this guy's an asshole type of thing. And I think that's what we should see at Payback. Just an absolutely unmerciful beating. Just as bad as the PG era will let you put on, or sometimes the TV-14, depending on, I know we've seen one or two of those lately. Whatever you're allowed to do within your boundaries, and maybe even a step or two over that boundary, you do it here. I think that would be an excellent way just to build everything for Roman and mega heat type of thing. So I liked all that. I'm interested in the match because it's different. We all know that Jey Uso's not going to be winning the title. He's just, a piece of the story, and he's going to be dead. So that'll be fun stuff coming up on Clash. I like it. I'm loving this new Roman. I love that Heyman is with him. I hope this is not something that just evaporates in a matter of months and Heyman turns on him and Roman's back to being a babyface again because Vince got to stick up his ass about something, or he accidentally sat on a kendo stick and it went up his butt and he's mad. So he's like, turn Roman back face. As long as we can keep Vince in check, because he's the only guy that has these knee-jerk type of reactions and these big decisions that he makes on a whim, provided that they can keep this guy at bay and let this shit go and just let these two guys do their thing, I think it's got potential. And I think this is going to be much better for Roman's legacy in the end. And he's going to, this is so much better already, than John Cena, because imagine if John Cena teamed up with Paul Heyman. That would have been something. So we're getting a chance to see this now, WWE taking a chance at Roman being a heel. Don't just change your mind. This is too big of a character. This is too big of a star on your roster to be changing your mind every day. So I say just stay the course and make this guy killer, man, because I think it sets up all sorts of great things for the future and all sorts of different kind of matchups now. Even with opponents he's faced before, the dynamic's going to be different. And I don't ever want Roman to not be a heel until the fans are ready to accept him back as a babyface. Then you got to turn him. But anyway, I hope he kills his cousin, basically is what I'm saying at Clash of Champions. Speaking of Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns, we had a new member of the Firefly Fun House debuting this week. Now, Bray had some other character in mind to debut. We cut to the Fun House, and he says it's time to unveil the newest member of the Fun House, the Pasquale, the persevering parrot. And he's got a box there, and he opens it up, and he's like, oh, shit. And then they go to, technical difficulties, and they come back, and he's like, I guess we forgot to poke holes in the box. So the parrot is dead. That's when Devil Vince McMahon shows up, and he kind of scolds Bray Wyatt, says, you've lost your title, and you've proven to me that you can't handle the Funhouse on your own. And he even says he would fire him if he didn't shape up, which is kind of ironic considering his father just got fired the other day. And Vince says that he has a new character to help him with the show because he can't handle it on his own, and he introduces Wabbly Walrus. Now, about a week ago, there were some stories online hitting the news sites, Fightful and others, saying WWE has filed for a very bizarre trademark, Wobbly Walrus. We heard this name a week ago, and we're like, what the fuck? And we all kind of had the same wonder. We're like, oh, God, I don't even want to know. So I'm almost like relieved that this is a Funhouse character and not a wrestler. I mean, part of me thought it might be like an actual debuting character, and I'm like, no. So this is basically a Paul Heyman parody, and it's the Walrus, and he's got, the Paul Heyman hair and these really creepy-ass eyes, and, and he's mumbling in kind of the Paul Heyman promo type of way. Pretty funny there, and I guess he's going to be a permanent fixture on the Funhouse, at least for now, or at least for the duration of Bray Wyatt's feud with Roman. So we'll see, but I think Wobbly Walrus isn't the only potential new member of the Funhouse or Bray Wyatt stable. We could be seeing Alexa Bliss. I'm going to fast forward a little bit down here to this match because we had a fatal four-way number one contenders match to face Bayley for the title, and it was Lacey Evans versus Nikki Cross versus Tamina versus Alexa Bliss. And during that match, we saw Alexa Bliss kind of zone out and kind of walk away. And then she hit Nikki Cross with a Sister Abigail on the outside of the ring and then kind of walked away. So that is still there. And I'm excited to see when Bliss and The Fiend finally align for some reason. That's going to be fun. So I guess she'll be more maybe of a Fiend alliance, maybe not so much in the Funhouse, but I don't know. But I like that they're not done with that, and I like that they're still hinting to something going on with Alexa Bliss and The Fiend. Good stuff. This was fun. So we've got Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles supposed to have an Intercontinental title match. Sami Zayn is losing his shit. He still thinks he's the Intercontinental title holder or the champion. He's got the belt with him. We saw him come back a couple of weeks ago. He's back in the truck prior to the match, like the production truck, just wreaking havoc. Get that graphic off the screen. This match should not be happening. Hey, what does this button do? What does this button do? And they're all freaking out, telling him not to touch shit. And he keeps touching it, and then they like immediately just cut to commercial. So it almost seemed like Sammy was the reason they cut to commercial. So I thought that was a nice touch. AJ and Hardy make their way to the ring for the match. Sami Zayn comes out to the ramp. He's bitching, stop the match. This match should not be happening. I'm the real champion. All this nonsense. Adam Pearce has to come out and make Sami Zayn leave so the two guys can have the match. AJ and Hardy start battling. A couple minutes into the match, Sami shows up again. He attacks AJ Styles on the outside of the ring, allowing Hardy to win via DQ. Then he hops in the ring and attacks Jeff Hardy as well. So they're clearly heading for a ladder match here. No? Right? We talked about that when Sammy first came back. I'm like, yeah, you got to hang both of those belts up in Madison Square Garden. But we can't go to Madison Square Garden, but we can go to Orlando. So I think at the Clash, you're going to have both titles hanging. I think you should have both titles anyway, hanging from the apparatus and have a three-way ladder match. Sami Zayn, Jeff Hardy, and AJ Styles. I think that could be a lot of fun. I'd be into it, and I always enjoy the Intercontinental title being defended in a ladder match. So yeah. I kind of hope Sammy wins it. I kind of hope he does. Talking all that shit, and then he wins it. Oh, man. I'm rooting for Sammy, actually, in that match. I think he'd be a more interesting Intercontinental title holder than either of the other guys, because we've already seen him run with the belts. And two, it was after the match, I believe this happened as well, right? It was when Jeff Hardy was, like, leaving, and he kind of collapsed off the ramp, and they provided an update on him, and apparently it was, like, dehydration, and a lot of people pointed out that might have been a little bit of a knock on AEW for how they handled the Matt Hardy situation at All Out. And I think it kind of was when you look at it. So I kind of thought that was interesting. Little shots back and forth. Next up, we had Bayley explaining herself. Big Bayley promo here. She's in the ring sitting in a chair. They show a recap video package, and she goes on to explain why she did what she did, which is just a Category 5 ass kicking she put down on Sasha Banks last week, which was great. I think Roman should outdo that with whatever he does to Jey Uso at Clash. I think it needs to be something to that degree, maybe even worse. But Bayley, of course, beat the absolute hell out of Sasha Banks last week. This week, she's going to explain herself, and I thought it was pretty good. I liked that she, her explanation for it, because we kind of all knew ever since this alliance, or ever since we've been sniffing out that they're going to break up or something, they're using each other. And she says that. She goes, Sasha, I knew all along that you were using me because I was using you too. I used you to become Bayley Dose Straps, and after last week, I used you to become, the Grand Slam champion. I used you to be the longest running SmackDown champ in history or whatever the other accolade she has. She said she used Sasha to get to that point, but after last week when they dropped the tags, she officially had no more use for her, and that's why she eliminated her out of her life, and that was kind of the end of the promo. So it wasn't a very long promo, but she explained it, pretty well. Like they were both two-faced. They were both ready to stab each other in the back, and Bayley kind of just beat her to the punch type of thing. So they don't mention here anything about a clash match. I don't know if they're going to hold this off, but I think, with the Cell coming up, by the way, they moved the date of the Hell in a Cell. It is now a week earlier in October. I think it falls on the 25th. So that will be the date of Hell in a Cell. I feel like that should be a Cell match, but I'm not sure if we're going to get one prior to that at Clash first and then do the rematch in the Cell. I feel like it could go either way there. But I expect, that's probably going to be a title match coming up here shortly, provided Sasha is cleared to return in kayfabe. I think the first one should take place at the Clash, and then maybe the second one in the series is at Hell in the Cell. I don't think Hell in the Cell would even be the blow-off. I almost think there'd be like 3 matches between these ladies, if I had to guess. But anyway, that was that. Now, as Bayley is leaving, that's when they start the Fatal 4-Way match that I mentioned earlier. Nikki Cross comes out first to make her entrance, and Bayley just attacks her and beats the shit out of her in the entranceway. And then they go to commercial, and they come back, and Nikki is allowed to continue. She wants to work the match, and she does, and she winds up winning the match. Now, like I said earlier, Alexa Bliss hits her with the Sister Abigail on the outside of the ring and just kind of wanders away. And she's almost, I don't know if you noticed, she's back to wearing her, older school gear. Haven't seen her wear that in a while, in a couple of years, it feels like. So she's kind of back how she used to look. She kind of got off into a trance, wandered off, hit the Sister Abigail. Clearly, she's still under the influence of the Fiend, and that allowed just the other 3 to continue in the match, and Nikki was able to win by rolling up Tamina for the pin. So Nikki Cross gets another opportunity to win the title, and I guess that's fine because Bayley's got to face somebody as a way to launch her into the Sasha match, and I think that if this match, I don't know if they've announced it, is it supposed to happen next week? If Bayley and Nikki happens next week, I think that will be, or whenever that match happens, that will be the return of Sasha Banks. Like, she'll come back, attack Nikki, match will be a DQ, Nikki will get screwed out of her opportunity again, and Sasha will just beat the shit out of Bayley, and that'll set up whatever match they're doing. So that's what I'm guessing is going to happen there, unless they wanted to go crazy and have Sasha Banks come out and cost Bayley the title, but that would be no fun. I think Sasha Banks needs to challenge Bayley and beat her for the title. But if she came out and actually cost her the title against Nikki, that would be a direction I didn't see them going in. And then you can just have Sasha Bayley feuding without the title, because there's enough story there where a title really isn't necessary if you think about it. But the title is kind of like the icing on the cake, cherry on top. I think it needs to be there. So I don't see that happening, but you can at least consider it. You know what I mean? Just a couple other more things to talk about here on SmackDown, and then we'll move on to Super Tuesday and Super Wednesday, and I'll answer some more Super Chats. But like I said earlier, there's definitely something going on with the briefcase, the Money in the Bank briefcase situation. The Miz and Morrison are trying to get the briefcase away from Otis. Now, I missed how the lunchbox got involved in this. Now there's a lunchbox, a Money in the Bank lunchbox. What the fuck? That has the contract in it. Otis takes on Morrison on the show. He beats him with like a Vader bomb. And Miz is on commentary the whole time, and I think he makes off with a lunchbox or something. So they steal it. So they think they have the Money in the Bank contract. They cut backstage later. Otis is with Tucker, and Tucker's like, "Dude, they got the lunchbox." He's like, "Oh, they got a lunchbox, so they don't have the lunchbox." And then he opens up the briefcase to show a different lunchbox in there, and then he opens it up, and that has the actual paper contract for the Money in the Bank. And then the Miz and Morrison think that they've pulled one over. They've stolen it because Miz's motivation here is to steal the actual physical contract so his lawyer can find loopholes in it as to how he can get his hands on the Money in the Bank. So when they open up that briefcase or that lunchbox, there's just an apple core in there. So they're taking this thing ways really, really far. But I like Miz's motivation here. He's trying to finagle that briefcase away from Otis because he probably couldn't manipulate anybody else in this way. And he also said that he's going to call in a favor. He goes, "I'm going to call in a favor." And I think on Talking Smack, he said something similar, like, "I'm going to get Mandy traded to Raw." And then today, WWE released on social media that Mandy was traded to Raw. And apparently she didn't even know that. She quote tweeted it and just said, "What?" with a bunch of question marks. So Mandy Rose apparently is going to be on Raw now. Now, normally that would be a big deal, you would think, because Miz would really be fucking over Otis. Hey, I'm going to put your girlfriend on a separate roster and a separate traveling schedule, but everybody is in Orlando and everybody is at every TV. So in terms of Mandy and Otis not being together, this isn't going to do anything in terms of the relationship, but it does put Mandy on Raw now, apparently because of the Miz. So what kind of, who owes him favors, and who's he in with in management that he was able to pull this off? So I think what will wind up happening here is maybe Otis will want Mandy back on SmackDown and he'll trade the briefcase for it. Whatever this is, it's a play to get that briefcase. And I don't know. I mean, if he trades it over to the Miz or something, I mean, I've been saying for a couple of years, now that I would like Miz to cash in or not cash in, but be champion again. But right now with the championship landscape, the last thing I would want to see is see the Miz take the belt off of Roman with the briefcase or something, or McIntyre. It would just be odd to me. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with the briefcase. I'd hold it off, though. I'd hold it off until the championship situation is a little bit more unstable and somebody can cash in. But one thing I'm almost certain of is whenever the briefcase is attempted to be cashed in, I can't see it being Otis that ultimately does it. I can't see it being Otis winning the title either. Just don't see that happening. So we'll see where all this goes and where it takes us. But Mandy, I'm sure we will see her this Monday on Raw. And the final thing I want to mention about SmackDown is the vignette for the Mystery Woman. Apparently there's some Mystery Woman. We've seen this vignette, I think, a couple times now. They did one last week as well. A lot of body shots. She's like in an evening gown, pulling up her stockings or whatever. You see a lot of her legs and a back shot of her in this like sexy dress and really long blonde hair. And from what we can tell, this is 100% Carmella. I think it's Ryan Shamrock, but most people are saying it's Carmella. A lot of people thought it might be Emma. A lot of people thought it might be Eva Marie, which would suck. I suppose it could still be Eva Marie. It didn't look like her. I mean, they could always have Carmella as a stand-in to throw the fans off and then debut Eva Marie. I wouldn't hate that, even though I hate Eva Marie. But we haven't seen Carmella on TV in a while. A repackaging seems plausible for her, and she probably has a somewhat of a safe job at the moment. Even though they weren't doing anything with her, she's a character that's always offered a fair amount of entertainment. She did the stuff with R-Truth. She's currently dating Corey Graves. WWE's always seemed to like her. She's a former champion, so try something else with her. But it feels like we've kind of seen this gimmick before. Now, we haven't seen much of this, just a couple of vignettes, but it appears to be an Emelina or a Eva Marie type of thing, or a Lana type of thing. All three of them kind of did the same shit. So it feels like that's what they're doing here, and I don't know why Carmella would be any different than the rest of them, because if Carmella is going to try to be all classy and fancy, I don't know if that's where her talents are. I think her talents are kind of like bopping and bebopping around and dancing around and being a little bit more, energetic and charismatic, I suppose you could say. That's just my opinion. So if it does turn out to be her, which everybody is just insisting that it is, and I believe them, I believe it is Carmella as well. I don't know if it's going to, that type of a repackage is going to do anything for me in terms of how I feel about Carmella. I was fine with the way she was, but we'll see. We'll see how that pans out and how long they jerk us along before they finally debut her. We'll move into the Tuesday and Wednesday night wars here now in a minute, but let me cruise back up here and do the super dupers. Hey, Domination Warrior, I missed you earlier on. Thanks for the $2, dude. Hi, Greg. I enjoy your show. MJF sucks. Roman's better. MJF sucks. Roman's better. Oh, well, yeah, Roman is kind of better because he's got the better resume, that's for sure. MJF had some fun stuff to talk about on Dynamite, didn't he? Antoine, I got a couple more in from you, I think. There's 5 more from you. They thought it would scare them. I'm just saying I understand. I also think they could have been get pressure from YouTube, especially about Twitch. Oh, yeah, I'm sure there's reasons, for them doing what they were doing. I get it. And I'm relieved to hear that it's not like the talent can't do it. That was my only thing. At first they weren't really a whole 100% clear on that, saying, okay, wait a minute, are they saying not to use it at all? But yeah, I can understand WWE's, ways, but either way, it came off so abrasive that it caught the attention of other people. Once they clarified it, then it was a little bit better, but it's almost like now the damage is done. Now you've got some eyeballs on you examining it. I had John Oliver doing the thing last year where he did a wonderful piece on how effed up WWE is internally. And what happened? It just went away. Nobody ever thought about it again and tried to really examine the injustice that goes on. So this has drawn more attention to other things in the company just by them doing this. Where if they just would have, and which is also ironic because it's, talking about protecting the brand, and you might have just opened yourself up here to a whole bunch of government interference that's going to, drastically change how you do business, all because you were trying to protect your brand. You just kept your fucking mouth shut, wouldn't have mattered, and let the talent do what they wanted to do. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot, I feel like. Thanks for 5 more, dude. Appreciate that. Roman, smug, you disgust me look was so awesome. It was. The way he just kind of like, ugh. His own cousin, just looking at him in complete disdain. And it's kind of funny to watch Uso, Jay, be so clueless about that. Like, how doesn't he not see that he's about to get murdered, straight up murdered at the pay-per-view? You think they need color? I do too. I would bust Jay open and wipe the blood on the title like a sacrifice. Yeah, something like that. So you're on the same page as me because I was saying that earlier. Like, whatever they do, they need to do whatever the limit, whatever the limit is. Take it all the way to that limit, all the way to that line, maybe even put a toe or a foot over that line. And do something to where you just got a ton of blood in the ring, or Roman does the thing, because he's still not really, I guess that's the gear he's going to be wrestling in, like the cargo pants and now the Wreck-It Ralph shirt or whatever that he's wearing. I don't know if he's going to go back to that dumb vest or not, or if he's eventually going to wrestle with the shirt off. I don't know. But if he did, it would be cool to see him like bloody up Jay and then like wipe the blood on his chest like Brock did to Hogan, or wipe it on the belt, like you say. I think that'd be great. I want to see some violence. I want to see some brutality. I think that's something that the storyline needs in terms of really changing Roman and making that full, complete transition now from suffering succotash babyface to killer heel. Somebody that Karrion Kross should even be scared of. You know what I mean? That's what I want to see out of Roman. Divine Ricks, appreciate the super chat and the retracted message. Thanks as always, man, for being here. And Devlin, thanks again for 5 more. Eva Marie versus Nia Jax versus Tamina in a 60-minute Iron Women match. Now that is a dream match. That's a nightmare match. My God, who the hell would even win that? Not Nia Jax, 60 minutes? I suppose Eva Marie would, in terms of endurance. Divine Ricks, there's some more from you. Appreciate it. Thanks again for 5 more. Hey, Greg, hope you and your loved ones are safe. Out of all the 4 horsewomen, who's your favorite one? Mine is Sasha. Yeah, I might go Sasha too. I mean, I always have the back of Charlotte, just like I do with like Roman and stuff, because I think the Charlotte criticisms are just so over the top. But that doesn't mean she's my favorite. I just think that she's unjustly shit on a lot. So I think Sasha, as far as just the overall package, in terms of being in the ring, her look is just fabulous. She's got charisma. She's good on the mic. She can play the character well, and she's got experience. I'm not gonna disagree with Sasha. She probably would be mine too, although I've never really thoroughly thought about it. Let's talk about NXT and AEW. Why don't we talk about NXT first? Because I'm only talking about 2 matches on the show. Because I only kind of skimmed through the rest of NXT. NXT opened up with the title match, and I watched that, and I watched the cage match. All the other stuff I caught YouTube clips. So I only want to talk about the 2 big ones, and that, of course, is Finn Balor taking on Adam Cole for the vacant NXT title. This was set up the previous week in the big Fatal 4-Way Iron Man match, or the 4-Way Iron Man match, when we had a tie. Like we knew we would have, and we talked about that a lot last week, that we said it's going to be a tie, and it was to bump it to the second Tuesday show where you actually crown the champion. And I was really excited about this match despite the predictable nature of it. I mean, Cole just came off an insanely long run on top. Putting the belt back on him here when he's in the ring with somebody like Balor, no, it's going to be Balor 100%. And it was. And they didn't really drag it out too much. I mean, they made it pretty clear. Balor won pretty decisively there, and you knew he was the official winner. No funny business, no sketchy ass win, no holding the tights, no cheating, no nothing like that. It was just a good solid match between 2 pros. Show respect after. Even Adam Cole even put over Balor's win later on backstage, and that's our new champion. That's hopefully not our transitional champion or our placeholder champion, depending on how long Karrion Kross is out. But Finn Balor winning the title was absolutely the right decision there, and I'm happy that he's back on top of that mountain. I miss him in NXT. I loved it when he was champion last time. So now it'll be interesting to see if we ever do see the Demon again, because we talked about Karrion Kross facing the Demon. That would be some cool shit. So depending on how long Kross is out, there was some talk that he might need surgery. I don't know what the latest on that is, but I would have Balor remain the champion until he comes back. Otherwise, you're just passing it around without even any real meaning because Karrion was the one that coughed it up. So I would try their best. If I was them, I would try my best to keep Balor the champ, provided he doesn't get hurt, keep him the champ as long as possible. And then when Cross comes back, you do the match. And you also don't do the Demon until then. It's been a long time since we've seen the Demon. Balor even recently, I think, did a little interview or a promo or something where he said, he was using the Demon as a crutch there for a while. So for him to be regular Finn Balor for so long without wrestling as the Demon for so long, it'll be awesome when he finally does return. And if the first time he returns is when Karrion Kross returns and Karrion Kross beats that Demon, that would be a huge deal for Kross, and it would almost like make up for the fact that he was gone because he beat Keith Lee. That should have been the launching pad victory for him. But now that he's out, he's almost going to need another one. So you do that again and you have him put down the Demon and win the title, and then he can just carry on like they were going to. That's what I'd do here. But again, that also adds some predictability if that's what they in fact do. But I'm almost okay with predictability because I really want to see what Kross can do, as like a champion and as like a dominant champion. And we'll see. But anyway, Balor is there. I'm interested to see who all of his opponents are going to be on TV, on takeovers until Kross comes back. He should have some excellent matches and some excellent opponents coming up here in the next few months. So congrats to Balor. He's the best. We all love him. And I'm glad he's back on top of the NXT mountain. And then there's no plans apparently for him to go back to Raw or SmackDown, which is great. Maybe after he loses, he'll head back. It's actually probably likely. But I'm very, very happy that he won. The Rhea Ripley and Mercedes Martinez match was great. They beat the hell out of each other in this cage match. I loved it. A lot of people were assuming that Mercedes Martinez was going to basically do what Timothy Thatcher did to Matt Riddle, beat him, and then they would head off to the main roster. A lot of people were calling for Ripley to go to Raw or SmackDown, and this might be her final match, but it wasn't. It might be Mercedes Martinez heading to the main roster, because as we saw on Monday Night Raw when Retribution did that video or audio distorted promo, people were undistorting it online. Did you see all those without the filter on it? And you could hear their actual voices. Definitely sounded like Dominik Dijakovic and also sounded like Mercedes Martinez. So I think she's one of the Retribution people, whether she's a stand-in or an actual member. Seems like she's there, and Ripley put her down in this match. I think my favorite spot in the match was Robert Stone was like climbing up the cage. They got all sorts of shit in there, tables and kendo sticks and everything. Rhea takes a kendo stick and just starts stabbing him like it's a spear, like right through the cage, right into Stone, and he goes down. She eventually gets Mercedes up on the top rope, and she gives her, what's it called? The Riptide through the table from the second rope for the win. And Ripley wins. That's great. I like Ripley. I really want to see her back on top of the mountain in terms of the women's title, because her run, to me, was way too short, and COVID and everything just kind of changed, and she ended the 2019 so strong, and 2020 hasn't been that wonderful. So I'd like to see her eventually get back to the top, and I'm glad that she had a big, big win here against Martinez. Good for her. And they also pulled in a decent rating. Both AEW and NXT did. NXT for Super Tuesday 2 pulled in 838,000 viewers. Now, that is a lot higher than when they're going head-to-head with AEW. And both shows now having a couple of weeks where they've run unopposed, they've really been able to analyze these ratings. And WWE is also greatly improved in that very key demo that everybody talks about on the nights that they run unopposed. And it's brought up the question if they will eventually permanently move to Tuesdays. And apparently it is something that has been discussed internally. They have talked about possibly moving nights here. And I mean, I'm okay with that. And I understand if they did, too, TV networks, they want higher ratings. And if they're up against a show that's killing them, get out of the way or move or whatever. So, they can enjoy, the full wrestling fan base there. But for the fan, part of me likes the fact that we have Wednesday Night Wars. I mean, the Monday Night Wars lasted for 5.5 years. It's not even been won yet. And we're already talking about like leaving it and fucking it up. But that's the nature of it. I think WWE very well could move to Tuesday nights. It wouldn't be a bad move. I think it would be a good move, and it would keep their ratings up and all of that. And the same would be true for AEW if they were able to run unopposed on Wednesdays. Getting 1 million viewers could be a regular thing. I mean, look at what did Raw get this week? 1.75? AEW got 1.016. That's not that low compared to what Monday Night Raw is, a TV show that's been on for nearly 30 years. Only drawing a little bit more than AEW is on Wednesday nights. So I think AEW is probably sitting back in the wings hoping, because it's kind of a game of chicken at this point, hoping that WWE moves first. If they move, they can just enjoy Wednesdays, an audience that they've already established for the past year, and they don't have to do anything aside from changing days every now and then during playoffs annually. I think that's what they're hoping happens as well, just for the sake of their own ratings. And I think it's the first time that AEW drew 1 million viewers during the year of 2020, right? I think they did last year once or twice. So this is a very big rating for them, and being unopposed really helped that. So that's what we're going to talk about now. AEW. This might have been the most loaded show of the week. There was so much going on here. I loved the beginning of Dynamite. You had the 2 SUVs pulling up. Tony is in the middle. They're outside. Shivani's outside. 2 SUVs just pull right up, nose to nose there. Jericho gets out of one. MJF gets out of another. They come face to face. They put each other over a little bit, compliment each other, talk about how the other was screwed, and promised each other they would both be world champion. Jericho's like, MJF, I guarantee you will be world champion one day. And MJF says, Jericho, I guarantee you will find your way back to the title one day. And they kind of do a little elbow bump there instead of a fist bump. And they walk away, and they do a little split screen with the cameras, and they both say, what a loser, when they're walking away. So that's funny. They're both two-faced heels, and I love that little interaction. A very nice, lighthearted way to open up Dynamite this week. We had a really good tag match to open up the show, the Jurassic Express defeating the Lucha Brothers. Now, this was interesting because it was a good win for Jurassic Express. I think they needed it. Jungle Boy has had a great week. He's been very impressive lately on television and in the ring, and I think he'll have gold in his career. He's so young. He's getting better and better. This was a fun match. Really kind of a weird finish, though. We had some dissension in the Lucha Brothers camp, and they basically were going for, I guess Penta was going for a destroyer, I guess on Jungle Boy or something, and he moves, and Penta accidentally hits Phoenix with the destroyer. I don't know how you accidentally hit your partner with a destroyer, but they figured out a way to do it. Jungle Boy immediately rolled up Phoenix for the win there, and Jurassic Express won. A lot of dissension, pushing and shoving between Penta and Phoenix after the match. Eddie Kingston comes down. He's recently trying to form this little group with Butcher and Blade and the Lucha Brothers, which is a really strange kind of alliance there. But he comes down to cool everything off, and he does. He gets everybody to kind of kiss and make up and shake hands, and all is right. And he goes on to remind us that he was not eliminated from the Battle Royal. So I don't know if they're going to make more of that than what it is, but he just says, read the rules, and then I think it goes to commercial or whatever. So really good promo by Eddie Kingston. I think they're using him in the perfect way here, bringing him out there to say some things on the mic every week and have something to do, and he's entertaining. So I liked all of that, and also kind of surprised that they might eventually lead to a split here with the Luchas. But if the tag team gold is not in the cards for them right now, they could be fun in singles. We'll see. But then again, they're still a team in other promotions. So if they split them up here, how does that work? How does that work? And what are other examples of when it's been done before? If a team's been split up somewhere, like in TNA, but they wrestle together in Mexico, like, are there other examples of this happening? If it does in fact lead to a split down the road, how does that work? Help me. I don't know the rules on that, y'all. After that, we had a Matt Hardy promo. Matt Hardy, of course, was seriously injured on Saturday at All Out. Took that nasty spill off the scissor lift thing there through the table, smacked his head like a jar of fucking pickles right on the concrete, and was knocked out cold. He came to, just on veteran instinct alone, tried to get up. They called the match. They rang for the bell, stopped the match. I immediately started typing on Twitter when that happened. Excellent call there. Good call. Matt's fucked up. You can't continue the match. But then you could see Matt trying to get up, and then the trainers somehow allowed him to finish, and then they continued the match, and they did the big spot with Sammy falling, and Matt Hardy got the win, and it drew them a whole ton of criticism about how they handled that and how they handled it after the fact. Matt Hardy went to the hospital. Tony Khan is trying to spin it, trying to light, trying to fan the flame, or not fan the flames, but put out the flames a little bit, saying he's got a CT scan and, it's showing no concussions. And, that's not really how you look for concussions. It's a whole different set of procedures here. He seemed to have everything confused. He was trying to ease everybody's mind that, oh, no, he doesn't have a concussion, but he does have a concussion. And Rebby, spoke up on Twitter to everybody that was making updates about Matt Hardy and saying, you guys haven't talked to us. She was very upset about, her husband being put in harm's way like that. She was she seemed a little bit irritated, not only at AEW, but also the fans and some wrestling reporters like Alvarez and Meltzer and shit like that who are reporting stuff. And she goes, fuck off, guys. None of you know the deal. So we get to Wednesday. Matt Hardy's actually able to come out and cut a promo, and he thanked everyone for their support. He seemed really, genuinely touched by how many fans were like just reaching out, hoping that he was okay. Because Matt Hardy, he's in his 40s, man. Matt Hardy's my age. He's a little older than me. So him falling like that was just extremely scary and could have been so much worse. He went on to say that he will make a full recovery, and when he does, he's targeting the AEW title. So he's going to make a play for the title here. Might be his final little spurt in his career. Might have been a wake-up call for him. Like, how many more of these type of spills can I survive here? He's had a rough go of it since he's been in AEW. He's been in a lot of brutal matches, and I think somebody in the stage of Matt's career and the age that he's in really shouldn't be wrestling to that intense of a degree. I mean, he's been busted wide open in the face, and he's had some hardcore matches with Sammy, and he's wrestling, just a really brutal style that I don't really think he needs to right now. Probably would have been better if he just stayed that broken character where he can rely a little bit more on that than what he's actually doing physically in the ring type of thing. So might be his last, little ditch here, when he comes back, if he does want to become a contender or at least get a title match. I don't know. I think it might be a nice little nod to Matt Hardy in his career if AEW, I don't want to use the word sympathy because I'm a big Matt Hardy fan, but if they gave him the title, it's, almost like a reward. You've earned this. You've had a hell of a career. Your brother's been champion. We feel like you should too, and just do it like out of respect for the Hardy Boy legacy and the Hardy Boy name. I know Matt was ECW champion, but come on. Doing it here might be, and maybe just for a month, maybe a short run or something like that. Maybe they could do it in between champions, maybe in a transitional form. Maybe he could be used, prior to somebody like MJF or Jericho winning the title back. He could be the guy to pass it to them or something. I'm not saying he goes out there and beats Jon Moxley clean in the middle of the ring in a main event of pay-per-view, but if he finds a situation where he can have a small run with the title, I'd be open to it just based on, my respect for Matt. Very interesting, too. They had Rebby in the audience. The camera panned to her, and she's got their newborn baby with him, and she's basically there, like, not taking her eyes off of Matt. So she's kind of holding the cards right now. He says he'll make a full recovery, but not only do the doctors have to clear him, Rebby probably has to clear him, because I would not want to trifle with her. She is crazy. So that was kind of a nice moment there. I think we can all agree that AEW made huge mistakes on Saturday. I said as much in the podcast, but that's really all you can say about it. You got to look at this, and you definitely have to learn from it because it's very serious shit, and you should have stopped that match for precautionary reasons. I think they know better now, and like I said last week, AEW does tend to learn from their mistakes. Now, you can't make too many mistakes, but when you're a brand new company, you are allowed to make some, and you are allowed to learn from them. And that's what I think they've clearly done here. And in a lot of ways, maybe this, this happening here to Matt, it's a good thing it happened in this way with Matt Hardy getting a concussion rather than it happening in a different, more serious way next time. Like, for example, let's say they let Matt continue the match, but he was so disoriented from the concussion, he slipped off the thing that he was climbing on when they did the finish and fell to his death or broke his neck or something like that, or passed out or whatever. So they almost dodged a bullet in a way here that it could have been a lot worse, and I think they will know better to not take any more chances next time, and that's all you can ask them to do. Learn from it. Big mistake, not cool, and a lot of people should have known better there, and I think this is something that will teach them that lesson, in my opinion. So we'll see. Hopefully we won't have to worry about it, and no more serious injuries will happen, but if they do, we'll see if AEW handles it better next time. After that, we had Orange Cassidy making pretty quick work of Angelico in a one-on-one match. Santana and Ortiz come out to attack Orange Cassidy after the match. The best friends make the save and challenge Proud and Powerful to a parking lot brawl match next week. So we might finally get some revenge on what Santana and Ortiz did to beautiful Sue's minivan. I cannot believe the heinous acts that they committed on that automobile, that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful automobile. And finally, it's payback time for those evil inner circle members. Really interesting dynamic between Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. We saw kind of a fallout with them on Saturday when they dropped the tag belts, and Omega kind of storming off and leaving. Hangman doesn't seem to be quite himself. There were two sets of sit-down interviews here, or two sit-down interviews, I should say. One with Hangman and Shivani, and one with Omega and Jim Ross. Now, Hangman Page seemed to be very almost, he had like a depressing tone or a depressing vibe to his promo. He was almost blaming himself for all of the problems with the Elite, him losing his friends, him losing the tag team title, where on the other hand, when you had Jim Ross interviewing Omega, he's kind of like, hey, I'm ready to move on. When I got here, I was supposed to be, the ace. I was supposed to be the diamond of this company and one of the leaders, and I kind of lost my way, but I found it again with Page and my, tag team with him, and I found new purpose and everything, and now he seems like he's looking to the future, where Page seems to be like regretting the past. So we'll see when all this finally implodes. I thought it would happen tonight. I think we even said that on the All Out review last Saturday. I was like, on Wednesday, this is finally going to implode, but maybe not. They're going to hold it off a little while longer, and that'll be a fun program, Omega and Page. And when that's over, Omega can maybe get back to title contention, and you can add, another major player there to the AEW title situation. I'd be more in favor of that, or very much in favor of that. And, Page in the same way. Those guys would make great single stars, on the roster, and I think it's time for them to go in that direction. So we'll see. I'm assuming we're going to get a program between them, but I don't know when it's going to implode or anything like that. Pretty interesting, no DQ tag match here. We had Jake Hager and Chris Jericho teaming up to take on Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss. Janela we're used to seeing in these type of matches, but not so much Sonny Kiss, but he held his own in there, flying around and doing some pretty violent shit. In the end, though, you knew Jericho and Hager were going to get the win here, probably pretty easily. Jake Hager pinned Sonny Kiss for the win there, and after that, Jericho got on the mic and said that Jericho and Hager want to make a run at the tag team titles. So they're going to officially team up now, which I think is great and is an interesting team, but it makes me really feel bad about the Les Sex Gods. I feel like if Sammy wouldn't have maybe gotten himself suspended like that, it would be Jericho and Sammy going after the tag team titles. That might be fun, but now it's going to be Jericho and Hager, and I like that. I mean, Jericho is continuing to do things on TV that's utilizing other guys or getting other guys over, putting over Orange Cassidy. Now he's taking a step down. He's going to work in the tag team ranks for a little while, let other people do their thing for the world title, and eventually, he'll probably go back to that before he finally retires or whatever, or try to make another run at it. But for now, he's just going to do that, and he's going to work, some tag team matches, and probably work with some, he'll probably work with Private Party and all these guys, and I think that's very cool of Jericho to kind of bounce around like where he is on the card and stuff. And now, he went from world title to now working with an up-and-comer, in Orange Cassidy. He put him over, 2 matches to 3, and now he's going to work for a little while in the tag team ranks and work with some of those people. Jericho's a pro, man. I like it. I'm not sure with him and Hager going after the tag team titles. I'm not sure if a match with FTR really makes sense. I think a match with like babyfaces makes sense, but we'll see what winds up happening with them. Speaking of FTR, we had the big tag team title celebration. Now, all the other tag teams were like at ringside for this, while Tully and FTR got in the ring with their suits and their champagne and just talked shit about all of the other teams around ringside. Pretty funny stuff. They get Jurassic Express in the ring, who are going to take on FTR next week in a non-title match. And Dax, or what's-his-face, one of them said that if they can beat him, they might give him a title shot. It's not going to be for the titles, but if you beat us, maybe we'll think about giving you a shot. So that's what WWE does. I don't want to see them doing that. Every time, half the time anyway, probably 50% of the time, we get a title opportunity in WWE, it's because the champion lost to that person. It's just such a lazy way of creating a title shot. So I hope they're not doing that here, but they might be. And maybe Jurassic Express will beat FTR to earn a title shot, and the Jurassic Express will be FTR's first victim or first successful title defense. That's probably what they're doing here, but they might just be taking one more match to get there. But I don't think they should be dropping a match, non-title or not, right after they win the belt. So I'm hoping they don't do what WWE does, and FTR just beats them next week. But anyway, we'll see. They did get an ice bucket dumped on them because I think they threw like a contract or a bunch of papers in Luchasaurus's face. He's about to kill the both of them with a double choke slam. They block it, scurry out of the ring, and they're kind of regrouping with Tully and I think Jungle Boy or maybe Stunt. One of them gets the cooler of ice and dumps it on top of them onto their nice, precious little suits on the outside of the ring. So that was pretty good. We also had MJF firing all of his campaign people. He's blaming everybody for his loss to Jon Moxley and continues to treat Wardlow like shit. Now, we talked about this right when he first teased it weeks ago. It's probably been 4 or 5 weeks ago now, maybe even more. When he first got in Wardlow's face, the very first thing I thought of was Alex Riley in The Miz, based on how MJF did it, how he got in his face. He was really intense, like just really demeaning and degrading towards Wardlow. So once that happened, I'm like, when Wardlow snaps, it's going to be ugly. And, it's only a matter of time. The way he was talking to Wardlow here, you could see the disgust. You could see he was biting his tongue, and Wardlow is really close to exploding. Eventually he will, and it's going to be so glorious to watch MJF get killed. Bad. He's going to get Sasha Banks'd by Wardlow, that's for sure. And it's going to be fun to watch that happen. But at some point, Wardlow cannot allow this to happen for too much longer. He can't take months of this shit the way Virgil took it from Ted DiBiase. I mean, he's Wardlow. He's huge. You don't let this little guy smack you around for months. You gotta pull the trigger on this soon. Maybe 1 more week, 2 more weeks at the most of MJF being a dickhead to this guy, and then he loses his mind and kicks his ass. That's what I think they should do with them, and it'll be fun when it does happen. We had Nyla Rose defeating Ty Conti one-on-one. She tried to continue the beatdown after the match, and Sheeta showed up to kind of stop the post-match beatdown a little bit there. I think the Dark Order after that approached Conti after, and they're still trying to get her to kind of join, and she seems a little weary of it. The main event was Brody Lee taking on Dustin Rhodes for the TNT title. This was pretty good. Dustin, I was even before when this match was announced a couple days ago during All Out, I went online and looked up some Wyatt family and Cody and Dustin matches from WWE and watched how Dustin and Luke Harper worked in the ring. And I was watching a couple of the clips, and I'm like, this match might be pretty good on Wednesday. And it was. We knew Brody was going to beat him. This was just an opportunity given to Dustin because he got the pin at All Out. So they gave him a title shot here, but we knew it was just going to further the story with Cody and the way he got annihilated, and it would be no different here. In the end, Brody Lee wins with the discus lariat, and the Dark Order enter the ring after the match, including Colt Cabana. Lee wants nothing to do with him. Brody is still pissed at Colt Cabana about All Out. He's kind of shoving him. He's like grabbing him by the face and just pushing him out of the ring, and Evil Uno takes him and like hauls him away or whatever. And the rest of the Dark Order just finish off and beat the crap out of Dustin and QT Marshall in the ring. And that was the end of that. And that was the main event. But if you noticed, I didn't talk about one big segment. Kip Sabian's Best Man. This was the highlight of the week for me. Before we get into that, though, let me just cruise up here. I might have to catch up a couple of super chats. Oh, not that many here. Before we get into that, I want to answer one from Divine Ricks. Appreciate it, Divine. Thank you for covering my WWE Network costs this month. You are awesome. Hey, Greg, did you have a specific wrestler that made you a wrestling fan? For me, it was The Rock that made me a wrestling fan back in 1999. Well, my favorite wrestler is Bret Hart, but I was already a wrestling fan before he became that. But he kept me in it. Like if I didn't have a connection to Bret Hart the way I did, maybe I would have lost interest in wrestling, maybe, but I still doubt it. I don't know if it was one person that made me a wrestling fan. I know my first memory was of Superstar Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes in their Madison Square Garden matches. And then, of course, Hogan was a big influence as well. But I don't think I have a specific wrestler, but my memories really started forming early on, about 2 years before Hogan got there. And then after that, the rock and wrestling stuff, Piper coming in, WrestleMania 1, all that shit. I was hooked by then. And then Bret just solidified me as somebody I'm just not going anywhere. Bret made me appreciate like the art of wrestling, where maybe I was too young before. I just liked wrestling. Oh, wow, pro wrestling's nuts. As I got a little bit older and I became, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, I started, appreciating like tag team wrestling a lot. I used to love the 80s tag teams, the Hearts and the Bulldogs and the Bees, teams like that, Demolition. But then as I got a little bit older, Bret really made me understand and appreciate like what a good wrestling match is. Where when I was 8 years old, I don't think I could tell the difference between a good match or a bad match. But when you get a little bit older, you start watching for a little bit more of that stuff. So I'm probably going to go Bret Hart. But The Rock is an excellent one. If I was a kid, if I was a different generation, and I was 20 years younger or 10 years younger, and I came across The Rock at age 12 or whatever in 1999, then, I'd be hooked too. So The Rock's an excellent one. Antoine, 10 more from you, dude. Appreciate that. That pissed me off. CT scan and male didn't show a concussion. When it happens to that BS concussion test, bro, I'm a former football player. No way it's that quick. No reason for those lies. I know. Yeah, well, they're just trying to, it's damage control. It's damage control. And I think that's another reason why they dropped the ball there a lot. Like AEW really, that was not handled well. I mean, that's really all you can say. It was just not handled well. And they should have maybe even owned up to it a little bit more, because the Tony Khan spin, you could tell that they were kind of like in almost like in panic mode or damage control mode there. But just do better, learn from that, and don't do that shit again. Put policies in place. Have a company meeting. Set out a memo. Here's how we do it from now on. We do not stray from this. This is the policy. You don't follow the policy, you are fired from now on. That's all you got to do. Send an email. I'll type it up. I can make it nice. Deshaun Robinson, appreciate the $5, man. Hey, Greg, I missed the last couple of podcasts due to work. How is everything going? You bastard. You missed the last couple? All right, we're going to block Deshaun Robinson here. I'm kidding. Everything has been going great, dude. Not a greatest day today, but it's been going great overall. Not much to complain about. Despite COVID, work is going well. Life is continuing. About to move out of here and have a brand new office studio set up in just a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And that might alter some video schedules here at the end of September, but I'll know more in the next couple of days of what that's going to be. But everything is going great, Deshaun, and I'm glad you can be here tonight. That's for sure. My Dixie wrecked. Good to see you, man. Appreciate the $5. Are you related to Barry McCockiner? What about Harry Paratestes? Do you know him? Thanks again for the 5, dude. There were rumors about Halloween being canceled. I'm scared because I don't want my box of straight razors to go to waste. That's nice. I don't want them to either, but you should not be doing that. I'm going to call the police on you. Yeah, Halloween's definitely going to be canceled. Nobody's going to be trick-or-treating. I mean, they might, but I don't think so. I think it's canceled, most likely. All right, and that catches those up. So now I want to get to the main, or not the main event, but the main part of AEW that I wanted to talk about, and that, of course, is the debut of Miro. Now, they had this thing they were hyping up all week. Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford are going to get married, and Kip is going to reveal who his best man is going to be on Dynamite. So they have a couple of, they do a couple of things where they bring out some false alarms. One of those was Brian Pillman. And he's in the ring and he's all happy. He goes, man, you texted me and said that I'm going to be the best man. And Kip's like, no, you had to read the thing. You missed the comma. I said, you're the best, comma, man, not you're the best man. So he sends poor Brian Pillman away, who just looks more and more like his dad every day. And I used to watch Brian Pillman wrestle when he had that mullet. Just amazing how well he has patterned himself off his dad and how similar they are in size and look and everything. It's eerie. Especially for someone who is such a big fan of Brian like myself. But anyway, after a couple of false alarms there, he says, okay, finally, this is it. This is the official best man. Shows the Tron. Little video package plays there, and out comes Miro. Miro is all elite, and the small crowd that they had there went pretty nuts. He's coming out there with his blonde. He's got that blonde hair now that we've seen him with on Twitch and stuff. He's wearing some like Gucci t-shirt and a long baggy Gucci pants. And he comes out to the ring and he hugs Kip Sabian. And a lot of people were kind of complaining, like, oh man, I don't want him to be like a second fiddle or a sidekick to Kip Sabian. I don't think that he is. I think they're just using this as a way to introduce him and maybe give him a new nickname, the best man. I think what's going to wind up happening is if they do this wedding and Miro is the best man, he's going to kill Kip Sabian. That might turn Kip Sabian face. I don't know. But I think if he's standing there as the best man, he should just annihilate him before he can even say I do. Penelope Ford runs out of the ring. Miro destroys the wedding set and just beats the crap and beats poor Kip Sabian bloody or something like that and completely turns on him and ends that little temporary alliance here. And then he will be on the main roster as, a killer. Or he could remain a babyface and kind of be funny and be charismatic like we know he can be, because he proved he can get himself over. Even when WWE didn't want him to get over, he got over anyway. And that's precisely why his push was squashed, because if you don't have permission to get over in WWE, you ain't getting over. And there's no bigger example of that than him. Now, of course, he's got to cut a promo, right? Because that's what you do when you jump over from WWE. You have to cut a promo. Now, I was really surprised. That's where a lot of these debates this week with me started online, because I was really surprised how many people took offense to what he said when I don't think it was bad at all. You can't expect somebody like him who went through the bullshit, because even the people that are complaining, oh, I wish you wouldn't say shit about WWE. What planet are you living on? You saw how he was handled. You saw how he got over, and then they put him in the dumbest angles with Lana, how they got mad at him for cutting his hair and announcing his engagement and making Lana marry Bobby Lashley, and Rusev jumping out of a cake and jobbing to Randy Orton in 5 seconds and doing all sorts of just stupid, keeping him off TV for months at a time, several different times, only to bring him back and do nothing with him again. It's incredibly frustrating. So how can you not expect him to come out and at least reference WWE? He doesn't have to cut a 15-minute promo on them, but he's going to have to say something. And what he said was not only not bad, it wasn't untrue. He talked about, he goes, for 10 years, I've been in the same house with the same glass ceiling, because that's what it has. There is a glass ceiling there. There absolutely is. There are some people in the company that will never, ever, ever have a chance to become a star, where it might not have been that way, 25 years ago. And he called them out for their glass ceiling and for their bullshit brass ring that Vince likes to talk about, which is completely BS. And he tells them to take the brass ring and stick it right up their ass. Miro is all elite, and that was pretty much it. It was maybe a minute-long promo. 30 seconds of it was WWE, and the other 30 seconds was, I'm all elite, I'm here, and he slammed the microphone down. He didn't go off on a rant. I was laughing at people who were saying he ranted. He didn't rant. He said one sentence of dialogue, maybe two. That's not a rant. And he said, and if he would have gone out there and just talked for 10 minutes about WWE, that's one thing. And I understand that some fans think that it can get overboard with certain wrestlers. I said that myself on this very podcast when the Brody Lee stuff was happening. When he first did the dinner segment and he yelled at the guy for sneezing, and he was clearly being a parody of Vince McMahon. Even when he was revealed as the Exalted One, and he said, I've already been held down by one out of touch old man. Little things like that didn't bother me. What I didn't want them to do was to obsess on it, was to harp on it and make the Brody Lee character, the entire character, the underlining theme in the whole character being a parody of Vince McMahon. You don't want to do that. And they didn't. They stopped it. So, and same thing with Moxley. He said a few words, talked about WWE as well. Anybody that comes in and is a victim of that broken system, I don't blame them at all for saying something. And all these fans that like to say, oh, they're harping on it. No, they're not. They're not. Now, if Rusev comes out here every week and says this shit, that's one thing, but he's not. He might drop a little line. He might take a little pot shot in the middle of his promo. But to me, that's not bad. To me, that's not obsessive. This channel was created because of the absolute insanity that existed in the TNA wrestling mentality and the TNA fan base. And one of the biggest problems I had with TNA, not only did the fans annoy me because they were so delusional, they're, oh, TNA's going to put WWE out of business in 6 months. You had people that believed that shit 10 years ago, when clearly if you have, just the most minor understanding of business and how it works, that ain't going to happen. It's impossible to happen. But they insisted on it anyway. But on top of that, it was TNA themselves. Everything they did, they hung on every word of WWE that WWE spoke. They brought in every wrestler, way worse than AEW, way worse. In TNA, as long as you just work there in some capacity, even behind the scenes people, they were bringing in. They would just bring in anybody tied to WWE because they got off on that type of stuff. Every promo, you had Road Dogg, and you had Art Killings, and you had Billy Gunn, and you had the Dudleys, you had Nash and Hall and X-Pac and Kurt Angle, and all these guys, Jeff Hardy, RVD, the list goes on and on, that were in WWE that would talk shit about WWE on TNA. Remember Cookie Gate? They showed up at SmackDown with fucking cookies. They were obsessed with WWE. When you take it to that degree, that's dangerous for your company, and we saw what the result was with TNA. I don't see that same comparison here. And one of the biggest things that we hear, and one of the biggest bullshit narratives that's floating around right now online, is that AEW is only WWE rejects. AEW is only WWE cast-offs. A lot of these guys were not cast-offs. FTR wanted to leave for a whole year. Cody Rhodes wanted to leave. They offered him millions to stay. There's so many guys that left on their own, and there are other ones who were let go, a lot of primarily probably because of COVID. If COVID hadn't happened, they would probably still be holding Rusev hostage, even though he had also asked for his release from the company. So if you have value, you're not a WWE cast-off if you're somebody that can offer something. If you're just signing everybody like TNA used to do, that's one thing. But when you look at AEW's talent roster, they're not anywhere near the biggest offenders here. Look at this shit. So who do we have right now in TNA that used to work in WWE? When they say the company is filled with nothing but WWE cast-offs, bullshit. Let's take a look at the list here. Here's AEW's roster. Here are the guys that I have written down that used to work for WWE. And some of these are iffy. Jon Moxley, Jake Hager, FTR, Chris Jericho, Matt Cardona, Dustin, and Cody. But Dustin and Cody are kind of arguable there because it's kind of a different situation with them. But Dustin and Cody, Miro, JR, Taz, Jake Roberts, Tully and Arn, again, not really. Tully and Arn spent a year there. Arn worked backstage for many years, but as the Brainbusters, they were there a year. They spent most of their time in the NWA. Brody Lee, Billy Gunn, Matt Hardy, Pac, Shawn Spears, Justin Roberts, Earl Hebner, and Ty Conti. I might be missing one or two, but that is a small list. That is a small list when you compare it to some of the people on the roster that haven't worked for WWE, like the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, MJF, Wardlow, Lucha Brothers, Eddie Kingston, Darby Allin, Ricky Starks, Hikaru Shida, Nyla Rose, Sammy Guevara, Orange Cassidy, Best Friends, everyone else other than Brody Lee in the Dark Order, Brian Cage, Private Party, Britt Baker, Big Swole. That's a giant roster of non-WWE people. So this idea that it's all rejects is wrong. Just watch Dynamite. Yeah, there's a lot of former WWE guys on there, but when you're a company that's brand new and that's yet less than a year old and that needs to build a roster, where are these wrestlers going to come from? They going to fall out of the sky? You going to go to Wrestlers R Us and just load them up in a shopping cart? They got to come from somewhere. You need some people that the fans recognize. You need some people that the fans are used to seeing on TV to help build up your roster. That's why Jericho was there. That's why Moxley came there, to really help add credibility that, we're just not a whole bunch of independence talent that WWE doesn't want. A lot of guys came from WWE. A lot of guys came from New Japan. Some came from Impact. Some came from Ring of Honor. I mean, you can look at WWE right now. Look at their roster. Think about how many former Impact and Ring of Honor talents are in WWE. From the AJ Styles to the Daniel Bryans and to so many Adam Coles and so many others. And a lot of fans will say, okay, yeah, well, the difference is, because first they say it's cast-offs, but then when you kind of debunk that theory, then they move the goalpost and say, okay, well, it's not that it's rejects, it's that I don't understand why they have to come in and cut promos on the WWE. Everybody does that. Everybody does that. And plus, in WWE, you don't see it very much because WWE, they don't have any reason to. They don't usually like to draw attention to other companies because they're already the biggest ones. They don't benefit by having somebody come in from Impact and then talk shit about Impact. That doesn't benefit them at all. All it does is give Impact attention, and WWE's not going to do that. Where with AEW, they're an upstart company that's trying to compete with WWE, so them, having little promos like this, I think, can be fun, and a lot of them can have a lot of truth to them in terms of how WWE handles everything. And look back at WCW. You want to talk about a company being full of WWE rejects, then you want to look at 1995 and 1996 WCW. Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Miss Elizabeth, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Ray Traylor, Ted DiBiase, Sean Waltman, Jim Duggan, John Tenta, Alundra Blaze, who threw the belt in the trash, Kamala, Beefcake, Jimmy Hart, Bobby Heenan, Mean Gene, Lex Luger, Sherry Martel, Jeff Jarrett, Mr. Perfect, Roddy Piper, Brian Clark, Barry Darsow, Virgil, Ming, Barbarian, Bret Hart, Jim Neidhart, British Bulldog. The list goes on and on. Brian Adams. The list goes on and on. So many guys come in, and a lot of them, when they got there, talk shit about WWE. What did Lex Luger say on the very first ever Nitro? I'm sick and tired of playing with little kids. What did Hogan say when he created the NWO? I made those people rich up there. What did Rick Rude say when he showed up on Nitro, when he was on Raw on the same night, and he shit all over WWE and Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels and how they screwed over Brett? This has always been done. Don't forget about Eric Bischoff. All the things that Eric Bischoff did, the constant insults. He challenged Vince McMahon to a match at Slamboree, I think it was. And they actually had the match booked for the pay-per-view, Eric Bischoff versus Vince McMahon. And of course, Vince didn't show up. They had characters like Vincent, who was Virgil, VK Wall Street, who was Mike Rotundo. Dustin came in as Seven. Remember the Seven promo where he shit all over Goldust and the WWE? What about Russo and Ferrara coming in? Russo and Ferrara came in, and Ferrara did that disgusting parody of Jim Ross with the Oklahoma. Kevin Nash dressed up like Vince McMahon. Goldberg called out Stone Cold Steve Austin on The Tonight Show. Everybody seems to look back with fond memories on Nitro. Done any of this to you seem a little bit excessive? Doesn't any of that to you seem a lot worse than AEW? And you can say, yeah, but no, there is no yeah, buts. Well, actually, no, there is no well, actuallys. I'm right. You know, I know it was 25 years ago and it was a different time, but that doesn't, I had people today comparing, promos. Well, you can't compare Miro to Austin. I'm like, I'm not comparing them. I'm not comparing Stone Cold Steve Austin to Miro and AEW. I'm comparing Miro to WCW Steve Austin. You want to know who the biggest offender of this whole thing is? Of somebody who talks shit about another company is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Has anybody ever watched the promos that Steve Austin cut when he got to ECW? Some of them were 30 minutes long, where he sat in Paul Heyman's basement with a microphone and just talked and talked and talked. And 90% of it was about WCW's fucked up practices, the political BS, his problems with Bischoff, his problems with Dusty, and his problems with the entire overall system in WCW. How it really hinders, holds down, and affects the careers negatively of really good wrestlers. And like I said, that Austin in WCW, that 1994, 1995 Steve Austin has a lot in common with Rusev. Both of them never exceeded higher than the United States title. Rusev got himself over with Rusev Day. Austin got himself over with Brian Pillman in the Hollywood Blondes. They weren't a team designed to get over. They got over on their own. But since they weren't supposed to get over on their own, they broke the team up and ended it way sooner than it could have been, and Hollywood Blondes could have gone on to be one of the most decorated tag teams in WCW history. And they fucked him up. Austin then went to singles and started getting jerked around when Hogan and the WWF crew came in. Hogan, Savage, and Duggan and all those guys came in, and everybody in WCW that was there, the Flairs, the Austins, and everybody else, they took a back seat to the influx of WWE talent that came in. And Austin had to do a goddamn job on a pay-per-view to hacksaw Jim Duggan in like seconds, where he lost the U.S. title, right? I don't know how long that match was, but it was a squash. Just like Rusev had to do to Randy Orton, where he ate an RKO 5 seconds into the match at like SummerSlam and got pinned. They were both victims of a lot of the same stuff. And the politics and the BS and what you're allowed to do and what you're designed to do, if you go off and do something on your own and get yourself over and make a connection with the fans without the permission of the company, they end it. And so Rusev has a heck of a gripe. He has a bone to pick. He was legitimately treated so improperly in WWE. Some guys, maybe they just weren't going to have it. You can't make the argument that everybody was underutilized. Some guys just weren't going to make it in WWE. Rusev is a guy that they dropped the ball on big. Same thing with Moxley. He was like, man, I would have stayed here forever, but this company's so fucked up, I had to leave. I didn't even want to leave. They just made me. Like, I can't be here anymore. Can't work under these conditions. It's crazy here. And so some guys are able to escape that, and become, their own people. And I don't think that calling out WWE once or twice in a promo is really that bad. And I think if they say anything now, even if you say one little tiny thing that might be considered as a shot to WWE, the fans jump all over them. Oh, I wish they wouldn't harp on it. I'm like, they're not harping on it. They're just saying one little thing, one little dig that's obviously getting at you because it's pissing you off. I understand. I actually don't want to see somebody focus their entire energy of the promos on that either. I don't want to see somebody come out there. I don't want Rusev out there every week cutting a 5-minute promo on WWE. That would be stupid. I agree. But he's not doing that. And he didn't come close to doing that on Wednesday. He mentioned what you would expect him to mention. Bullshit brass ring, glass ceiling, treating me like crap. I'm all elite now. Watch out, motherfuckers. That's all he did. Why is that so bad? He's not dumping belts in the trash can. He's not giving away the results of another show. He's not dressing up and making fun of somebody's facial paralysis. He's just coming out and saying, I hated it there. I'm here now, and I'm happy to be here. WWE, same thing. I said earlier, they don't really have a reason to do this. You don't see them doing it much now, but they did it back in the day. X-Pac returning from WCW the night after WrestleMania 14, shitting on Bischoff, shitting on Hogan. We all love that, right? DX drove a tank to Nitro. We loved that, right? Was anybody saying, man, I wish WWE would stop harping it? No, nobody was saying that. They were just like, wow, this is fucking awesome. Jeff Jarrett came in late 97 after leaving WCW. Cut a promo on Raw, shoot promo on Raw about Bischoff and about Hogan and all those guys. We had Jericho debuting and The Rock making fun of Juventud. You can find all sorts of examples where WWE has done the same thing. And look at their roster. Look at their roster back in the 90s when the Attitude Era started. It was all WCW guys. It was Barry Windham, Dustin Rhodes, Mick Foley, Steve Austin, Vader, Sid, Hunter Helmsley, Jim Ross, Michael Hayes, Jim Cornette. Every promotion has wrestlers or talent from another promotion in it. It's never been any different. WWE became who they were by absorbing and swallowing all of the good talent from the AWA. The biggest name being Hulk Hogan. The Hulkamania was born in AWA and was in Minnesota in 82 and 83. And Vince stole it, along with Bobby Heenan, along with Mean Gene Okerlund, along with Jesse, along with a lot of guys from the AWA. Pat Patterson, Shawn Michaels, Scott Hall, Mr. Perfect. They all came from the AWA. They all got over there, and then Vince took them. Same thing. And when you look at AEW, compared to all those other examples, compared to 2000s TNA, compared to 1983 WWE, compared to 1995 WCW, compared to 1996 WWE, when you compare all those rosters and how much talent from another promotion they have, AEW is the lowest offender of all of them. That's not an opinion. That is 100% easily verifiable fact. All you got to do is be able to read. So I think that this whole thing is bullshit. And when I brought it up, it was funny to watch everybody move the goalposts. I'd say, okay, everybody that says AEW's for WWE Rejects is wrong, here's the evidence as to why that's wrong. Then they move on from that and they say, okay, well, it's just that we don't like it that they come out and cut a promo on WWE and they make it such a big deal. I'm like, okay, here's evidence that's showing that compared to history, they're not really doing it that bad, and they're doing it no worse than any company has ever done before them. And then they move them again. And they say, well, now it's 25 years and it's not as cool as it was. I'm like, it's not about being cool. It's not a matter of the promos back then are cool, so they're okay, and the promos today are less as cool, so they're not okay. It's about the situations. Rusev and Austin's situations are very similar. Rusev had every much of a reason to say some shit on the mic as Austin did, except for Austin talked for 3.5 days. Remember Monday Night Quill with the Eric Bischoff wig? He dressed up as Hulk Hogan. He even he cut the promo on the ladder where he was shitting on WCW and called woman a $5 prostitute or whatever, And then he had the long drawn out promos where he was wearing like the camouflage hunting gear when he first kind of shaved his head, where he just talked for forever about Bischoff and specific things. He wasn't even talking about like in broad strokes or generalities. I mean, he's talking about specific examples, doing impressions of Dusty Rhodes. Austin wasn't a big Dusty Rhodes fan. Austin was jerked around by Dusty. So a lot of that stuff came out, and it was all fine back then. I lived through it, and I loved it. And trust me, I am the type of fan, and you guys who've been listening to me for years know this because of how I felt about TNA for so long. TNA, if AEW gets to the level that TNA was doing, then trust me, I'm right on this bandwagon with everybody else that says this is too much. They need to stop harping on this. They need to stop obsessing on this. It's too much. If they start doing what TNA is doing or was doing, then I agree, because TNA did take it too far. TNA turned the identity of their company into reacting to what the WWE did. And I've been saying for years on this YouTube channel that that's a big mistake and will end with their demise. And it pretty much did. I mean, they're still around. They're impressing again. Fans are actually kind of into TNA because they have turned a corner, but back when they were big, they're almost like too big for their own britches. They got too excited. Tried to go head to head with on Monday nights, and all that. Why are you doing that? Concentrate on your own company and don't worry so much about the other company. AEW, in my mind, based on what I've seen, and I've been watching wrestling for a long time, I guarantee that anybody's bitching about AEW having too many WWE guys on their show, I've been watching wrestling a minimum of twice as long as them. And I lived through all this shit real time. And when I compare what AEW is doing now to what all these other promotions have done in the past, it is nowhere near the same thing. And I think it's a silly, hollow argument that people are using online to mask the true dislike that they have for AEW. They don't want to admit it because they know they'll look like a shitty wrestling fan for it. You have a giant population of fans out there that want to see AEW fail. Why? So they can say, I told you so to their fans? What kind of life is that? Like what kind of social life do you fucking have that you would actually have that mentality? A company that's full of a lot of great wrestlers, even if you're a critic of AEW, I'm sure there's some people there that you like and some people there that you would like to see have a job. And we've all been so fed up with WWE and what they've been shoveling to us for the past 10 years. Why would you not want an alternative company? Why would Jim Cornette not want another company out there to provide some competition and maybe add some flavor and some spice to the wrestling business? Give WWE something to worry about, keep them on their toes, and WWE in turn will, force AEW to continue to get better as well. That's just what competition is about. That's what, the wrestling fans benefit. And I know it's been 20 years, it's been 19 years over 19 years since WCW was bought out. I know it's a long time ago, but I remember the Monday Night Wars well and how fun it was to have that competition. And I don't see any downside to having it again. So this particular argument and these particular debates, I think, are silly because none of them are true. And I just laid out the reasons why for you. And of course, it never fails. Like today on Twitter, it's always been, yeah, but. I'm like, no, yeah, but. Your yeah, but doesn't have an argument. Just take the L, on this one, because it's not accurate. That argument that it's all former WWE stars and all they do is talk about WWE is 1,000,000% wrong. Any idiot with 2 eyes and 2 ears can see it and hear that. Period. It's not an opinion. I don't, this is mathematics. You can just write this shit down and see it. This isn't what I think, it's what is. And that's the difference, So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the whole argument that's just so repeated. And I see that too. A lot of people just repeat what they hear. You can't be 19 years old and tell me that AEW is filled with WWE rejects. You have no clue. You don't have the first clue about the history of the business or the history of wrestling or all the other things we've seen prior to this. And like I said, I can be on the side of saying I don't want to see it too much. I can certainly understand that when it becomes too much, then it's too much. And maybe this is too much for fans. Maybe some of them are fed up and think that AEW is calling out WWE too much. Me personally, I don't think that. I don't have that opinion. I think it's fine. I don't think it's overdone. I think they should be careful not to overdo it, but I don't think it's overdone yet, especially after everything I just laid out there that WCW used to do and ECW used to do and TNA used to do and all of that. So stop moving the goalposts. That's basically what I'm saying. Yeah, and AEW is more tame than WCW, exactly. No, oh yeah, I got you, Bruce. I thought you were talking about something else. Madeline, good to see you. When WWE brought in Joe, Styles, Aries, Rollins, all those indie guys, why were they all not considered ROH or TNA guys? Just admit it. You don't like AEW and move on. Exactly. Now, a lot of fans say, well, those wrestlers didn't go over there and shit on their former employer because they didn't have a reason to. They didn't have a reason. If you're an independent wrestler working hard on the indie scene and you get signed to the WWE, you're not going to go on a microphone and shit on everybody that helped get you there. CM Punk's not going to come into the WWE and shit on Ring of Honor. He was bawling and crying his eyes out during his last Ring of Honor match. Remember that? He didn't want to leave. So there's no reason for them to do it from a professional standpoint, and also there's not a reason for the WWE to do it to draw attention to people that are below you. That's not going to benefit you at all. If it's not going to benefit WWE or put money in their pocket, they don't give a fuck. So it's AEW, it's these smaller companies that have to do this sometimes to kind of create buzz, to get fans saying, "Oh, look at that. Here's another guy that was treated like shit in WWE." I'm surprised that the fans don't have more sympathy for a lot of the wrestlers that were done wrong. Because a lot of people were I laughed at social media during Brody Lee when he wasn't connecting at first. I'm loving Brody Lee now, but I wasn't into him at first. The Vince stuff was kind of funny for the first week, but then it wore thin, and I didn't care much about Brody Lee. He lost the match to Moxley, and the Dark Order wasn't really impressing me, or I wasn't really into that either, and it was just kind of like, bleh. But now I've kind of turned the corner on that, and a lot of people were like, oh, see, told you WWE should have released Luke Harper. He was useless anyway. I'm like, what are you talking about? You've never seen Luke Harper wrestle? He's very good. They're not using a good wrestler. He was treated like crap, and it was well documented. His face told the truth during the Saudi Arabia thing when they got stranded. And there's that picture of Harper just sitting there with that blank look on his face, like, son of a bitch. What they put us through here, it's miserable. It's a misery being there. And that's why back in the day in WWE, when somebody would jump to WCW, they would bitch about the WWE because they felt like they were wronged. And then same thing in WCW. So many wrestlers, that came into the WWE had the Radicals, same thing. I don't think they said much on TV about it, but they were really done wrong and they were really pushed out politically. So they came to the WWE, and I think they made a couple of cracks on the mic, but, their revenge was getting over on their own and showing that they could be big stars like WCW didn't make them. So, like I said, there's just a balance there. You know, I will agree with the complainers here. If Rusev comes out the next 2 weeks on TV and talks shit about WWE the whole time, I don't care about one line. If he wants to cut a 5-minute promo and have one cheap shot at WWE, no problem. What's wrong with you guys? Are you snowflakes? You can't handle a little cheap shot? Come on. Snowflakes. Don't you guys like to use that word? If he does that and harps on it and he becomes obsessed with talking shit about the WWE, that's one thing. But you can't expect him to come out in his very first promo ever and not say shit. That ain't how wrestling works. And that's never how it's been with anybody that's gotten a raw deal in one company and moved to another one. Regardless of what time in history it is or where you're going, there's always going to be some shit to say. WWE is the only exception to the rule because they just micromanage everything and they have no reason to draw attention to anybody else. But that's not the same case, you know, when you're dealing with wrestling wars and you're dealing with competition and things like that. And to me, it's just not that big a deal. Know what I'm saying? Anyway, so that's that. Yeah, he wanted Luke Harper to talk like a Southern guy. Yeah, because Vince, he just doesn't understand. You know, he just doesn't know. He's got these ideas of what he has for a wrestler, and then if he can't envision that himself or envision something else, he deems them worthless. And I think that's ridiculous. Sorry, Stone Cold. I'm going to scroll up here and see if I missed any super chats while I was rambling on, because I also had my list of wrestlers pulled up on the other screen here, so I might have not seen some. Let me see. I got that one. Okay, so I think it's just yours. All right, I'm not that far behind. Nice. Sorry about that. And thanks for the 5, dude. Except for Cage and all women's, all current AEW champs are ex-WWE people. Yet I'm told Young Bucks and Kenny are the GOATs. All champs are ex-WWE people. Yeah, at the time they are. Yeah, FTR and Moxley and but they only have they only have 3 champions other than the women's. Oh no, and TNT. Yeah, that's true, but that's not going to the chapters aren't over. Like AEW is just turned a year. They haven't even been on TV a year yet. You know, so establishing yourself with some people that fans might recognize from being on TV is not the end of the world. The Young Bucks will be tag team champions. Kenny Omega will be AEW world champion. It absolutely will happen. There's you can't cram everything into 1 year. And it takes time to do all this stuff. They will be there. They will all be at the top of AEW. Cody Rhodes is going to be AEW champion one day. 1,000,000%. He will be AEW champion one day. Omega will be too. And I bet my house that it would probably be Adam Page as well. I think all throughout their careers, provided they stay there over the next 5 years or whatever, they're all going to be champions. They're all going to develop their legacies. And I mean, I even see people too, like every now and then online, they'll say, yeah, AEW is just, you know, I'm kind of giving up on them. I'm like, they are 10 months old. How can you give up on them when they've had like really good pay-per-views, aside from All Out, barring, you know, except for All Out, of course. But up until now, this first years, they put on solid pay-per-views. They've been impressive. And to me, they've been doing a hell of a lot better than what TNA did. And honestly, what WCW did. Because the only reason Nitro took over in the ratings and became the monster that it was why? Because of former WWE guys. The NWO was the reason. If Hall and Nash wouldn't have come in, it would have remained Dungeon of Doom and Hulk Hogan and Hogan and Savage against 16 guys in a triple cage, and it would be stupid, and it would be filled with the worst wrestling and just the worst crap ever, and WWE would continue to beat them in the ratings with superior in-ring wrestling from Shawn and Brett and Owen and Austin and even Scott Hall and Nash if they stayed there, and they would have continued to beat them. The reason WCW became so good was because of former WWE guys. Sometimes that's the recipe, and I think that's what TNA took a little bit too seriously, where they're like, oh, if you've even taken a shit in a WWE locker room before, we're going to sign you, regardless of how worthless you were to the company. And I don't think AEW is doing that. They're not bringing in everybody. They're just bringing in some people. And I think it's all fine. I don't think there's an abundance of former WWE guys there. Yes, there's some. Yes, there's a good handful. But like I said, Bucks, Omega, Page, Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, MJF, Wardlow, Lucha Brothers, Eddie Kingston, Darby Allin, Ricky Starks, Nyla Rose, Hikaru Shida, Britt Baker, Big Swole, Dark Order, aside from Brody, Private Party, Brian Cage, Best Friends, Orange Cassidy. Everybody there is a huge roster of people. Huge roster of people that haven't been in WWE. So it's not out of balance. And I think the fans that think it is are using that to mask their hatred. You don't have to be a psychology major to see that. It's pretty obvious. So anyway, there you go. What'd you do, Alex Bryant? Just realized I accidentally disliked the video and switched it. You son of a bitch. I will not block you. I will forgive you for that, Alex. Yeah, I think that's another stupid kind of like. There's no Kool-Aid to be drank. There's no Kool-Aid to drink. I think there are some that get a little bit too defensive and too defensive over their brand. I think that's a little bit silly as well. You have to be able to just judge it for what it is and not worry about fanboying out. But you can spot those people a mile away. You can spot those people instantly. Like, I won't even engage in an argument with somebody if I can clearly tell that they are completely brainwashed drone. You know, and they're just repeating shit over and over. I'm like, this is a worthless conversation to have. I got better things to do with my time than to argue with somebody that doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. So you can usually tell, you know, when they want to be really crazy like that. You can see them and just ignore them because they're not worth it. Hey, Nate, we talked about that earlier. Looking forward to Raw a lot. They got a stacked show. Not sure why they're doing Seth and Dominic again, but everything else looks kind of interesting. So we'll see. Yeah, Madeline, you're right. People forget AEW is a year old. You got people giving up on them and say, I've given them a chance and they're just not good. I'm like, man, if people gave up on Nitro that quick or WWE in 94 and 95, we'd be screwed. I think AEW overall has had a pretty good first year, despite everything. Despite COVID and all that stuff, they've offered us a viable alternative. They've given us good wrestling on Wednesdays and for the most part, hit some pretty good home runs on pay-per-view for the most part. But not every time. But when I look at what they're doing, I'm more pleased than not pleased. They're not perfect. There's a couple things about the show on Wednesdays that I wish they would do less of, and maybe a thing here or there that I would do differently, and that's going to happen with any promotion, even the ones you love. But that doesn't mean I want them to fail. That means I want them to do better. You know? That's all. Yeah, the biggest company has always had some money behind them. You know, Ted Turner, Vince McMahon, and now the Khan family. Nice. Glad to hear that, Zane. Your test results came in negative. I got a test as well a couple of weeks back, but I should probably get another one because we've had a couple of close calls in my restaurant, but I feel fine. Do I have anything else in my notes? I think I was saving the Russo or the Miro stuff for last. Yeah, I think that pretty much handles it for the notes. We've been going 2 hours here in the podcast, so it was a nice loaded episode this evening, but I think we discussed a lot. I'll be happy to answer any more questions down here or hang out for a little bit, and then I'll be back on Monday night after Raw. Oh, yeah, I talked about that earlier, Ryan. No real thoughts on it. WWE moved it up a week. I don't really think it matters what week it's on, so I don't know what the reasoning for it is, but I don't care. They can have it any week they want. But at least, that was a pretty big gap because I believe Clash is on the 27th of September, and so that would have been a long time. Been an extra week there, so moving it up, they got a little bit less time to build for the show, but that's good. It was kind of far away as it was. So I'm not sure why they even moved it or what the reasoning was, but I don't think it matters. Oh, yeah. Bruce, thank you for that. I forgot to mention that. So Cody, I guess that I didn't realize that he was off going to do some TV stuff or movie stuff. So the whole match with Brody Lee a couple of weeks back was kind of get him off TV for a while. And one of the things he's doing that they advertised during Dynamite for TNT, I forgot the name of it. Something like Go Home or Go Big Show or some shit like that. Basically, it's a talent competition. We see a ton of these that already exist on TV. And I think Snoop is one of the hosts, and Cody is going to be on the panel, and Rosario Dawson and a couple other people. I don't know who the hell they are. So he's going to be a part of that show. And that's understandable. You know, it's kind of like what Miz is doing with the USA show with the, what's it called? It's kind of like Wipeout. John Cena is going to be hosting a resurrection, I think, of Wipeout. So I don't know what that's going to do to the Miz's show since they're kind of like the same thing. But putting Cody out there on TNT. And again, you know, you're not selling the injury. Okay. But come on. 2020, man. Like, who believes it anyway? I understand, like, it's cool when you see people selling stuff or taking the, you know, not breaking kayfabe or whatever. But at this point, you're only doing it. Even if Cody sold the injury, you wouldn't think he's injured. You just say, oh, wow, cool, he's selling the injury. I I always laugh about that too. And like in WWE, how, speaking of Rusev, you know, how we got so mad at WWE a couple years ago when they seemingly punished Rusev and Lana for like announcing their engagement, you know, because it like broke kayfabe. But on the very same show, they're promoting a network special that airs right after Raw, where the entire, like if it's a WWE 24 or something like that, where the entire hour-long documentary is exposing the business. You know, it's like I don't even think there really needs to be a thing of that. I think that's grasping at straws or nitpicking. So he's on the show, not selling the injury. So fucking what? Like, I don't give a shit. Like, if Miz got beat up on Raw or SmackDown, I wouldn't care if he didn't have a neck brace on Wipeout. What's it called? I forgot the name of the show. Whatever the hell his show is called. Like, that doesn't bother me too much. Again, I think it's unnecessary ammunition to use, especially in today. If it's in the 90s or something, then yeah, maybe. But we all know the deal. Yeah, exactly. That's a pretty good comment there, Madeline. I feel like every time someone says they hate AEW, there's never a valid reason. There's not, other than their own hate. The only reason they hate them is because of the fans. That's it. The war here isn't with the company. The war here is with the fans, because now that we are in the information age, when I was a kid and when I was younger and when I was a young wrestling fan prior to the internet, there was nobody to interact with unless you wanted to write and have pen pals and stuff. So these arguments and these opinions didn't happen. Because the closest they would really come to happening is like maybe if you're at a wrestling show and you're waiting in line to get in the building and you're chatting with some fans and they've got some stupid opinion, you know, or whatever. I remember when I was at Survivor Series in 2018, I was at the No DQ meetup thing that we had across the street from the Staples Center. And fans were stopping by saying hello to us and stuff. And I was speaking to one guy, and it was right before, you know, right after the Nia Jax thing. And I was just telling somebody else, like 5 minutes before this, we were kind of laughing about how it's just repeated to death on social media. Nia Jax is a dangerous worker. Nia Jax needs to get sent down to NXT. I'm like, she just potatoed someone. Fucking happens all the time. God damn. These young kids, you know, just go back to the 70s and 80s and watch how many broken noses and cauliflower ears would happen. You know, it's not like you don't have to automatically just revert to that. She should go back to NXT. And I'm talking to this guy, and he brings up Nia Jax, and he's like, man, she just really needs to go back to NXT. And I'm like, I'm not listening to that. It's like, God damn. I'm like, stop repeating this stuff. I'm like, it's not the, you know, yes, she potatoed her. Yes, it was dangerous, but NXT, come on, you can work with her on that. It can be dealt with, and she's gone on to injure a few more people and stuff. But, you know, I just hate it when, like, something gets rolling and then the fans just repeat it. And a lot of this stuff with the AEW, I just think that they should try to think more for themselves and not repeat what they read on social media from people on the side that they're on. They hate AEW, so they search out all the AEW hating people online just so they can argue and stick it back to the fans. We see the same thing in politics. How scary is that? The well-being of the country is not at stake on November 4th. The ability to brag to the people on the other side of your political preferences is on the line. You know, people are going to go and vote for a complete moron in order to own the libs. That's not worth it. You know, you should do more than that. You should care a little bit more than what other people think. And that's where a lot of this stuff, that's why when we're on the Twitter age now with wrestling, why there's so much division, because you didn't have that opportunity. I remember one time when I was like 13, I had a pen pal. It was a girl. We got each other's names out of or maybe I got her name out of a back of a magazine. That sounds so perverted, but I got her name out of a back of a magazine because there was like little advertisements or like want ads. Hey, write to me and we'll talk wrestling or whatever. And so I was going through like reading, because everybody would like list who their favorite wrestlers are. And I think hers was like Bret Hart, Randy Savage. It basically mirrored mine. So I kind of picked that person out to be my pen pal. And then I remember we wrote back and forth for like maybe a year, like a few letters each, you know, and it was just wrestling. That's all it was, just talking about wrestling. Yeah, can you believe what happened on TV this week? And, you know, this sort of thing. And, you know, it was like 1989 or something like that. And it was weird. Like that was the only communication you had if you wanted to talk about wrestling and get opinions out or anything like that. I remember one time being at a newsstand buying a ton of, I've shown my magazine collection before on YouTube. There's a couple videos out there if you want to see it. And I would go to the newsstands or go to the bookstores or wherever where they sold the magazines. And I remember one time there was a guy in the line that was buying like I had like 5 magazines in my hand and he had like 2, and they were wrestling magazines, and I kind of looked over at them, and one of them had like Razor Ramon on it or something, and I'm like, do you think Razor is gonna leave WWE or something like that? And we had like a little 5-minute conversation, and I remember being so like thirsty for more. I was like, man, I want to talk about wrestling with people. I have nobody to talk about wrestling with other than my buddy Daniel. Other than that, like I didn't have anybody around because there wasn't an internet to have a Twitter and have a social media where you can just constantly debate and have opinions and share stories and shit like that. So once all this started, you know, that's why I got into the hotline stuff. I was doing the hotlines years ago prior to the internet because it was a way for me to discuss wrestling and discuss it with other fans. And now it's so over the top. Now it's so easy to discuss it with everybody. It's very, very easy for like arguments to happen. And then it's very, very easy for untruths to become truths. And people start getting in this idea and then they start pushing it. AEW's WWE rejects. AEW's WWE rejects. AEW's WWE rejects. And I'm like, no, AEW is not. Here's why. You know? So it's that sort of thing. It's kind of like out of control now. But it's still more fun than being a pen pal. So I guess I'll take it. If we have to have this sort of life, but you have to have a bunch of people arguing, so be it. I'd rather have this than nothing at all. You know what I mean? But social media and the internet has definitely changed how wrestling fans watch wrestling and how it forms their opinions. Because a lot of it is formed based on others' opinions. I don't hate WWE. I just don't watch it. There is a pretty good that's a pretty good mentality to have. Madeline, what sounds fun? Oh, maybe not. Okay, you're talking about Ryan's. I thought you were talking about me, my pen pal. Book Roman versus Jay like Dolph versus Goldberg at SummerSlam 19. Yeah, I was about to say Dolph versus Goldberg. I forgot about that match. I'd book it even worse than that. I'd book it like Brock and Kofi. And then after the match, I'd have Roman continue the post-match beatdown and absolutely murder his cousin. I'm talking blood and all. Like all the way, man. That's what I want to see. And we talked about that at the beginning of the podcast here. That's definitely what they should do. Nice. Your pen pal gets out in 7 months. Tell him or her hello. Well, yeah, Bruce. I mean, anytime you're just going to say WWE is crap and all that, you're talking with your heart, not your head. WWE, a majority of it is crap, yes, but not all of it is crap. There are some watchable things, and there are things worth watching in WWE. To have that one just blanket statement, trust me, I'm frustrated with WWE as much as anybody else. I want next year Andrew Yang to change some things in that company, and I'm hoping they undergo some serious business practice changes and just things just change for the better in general. They are highly annoying to me, but just to say they're crap across the board, no. There's too much talent there. To say WWE is crap, you basically just said the Adam Cole and Finn Balor match on Wednesday was crap. No, it wasn't. Or Tuesday. I understand being upset with WWE. Just don't be so cut and dry. It doesn't have to be so black and white, you know? And I think a lot of the wrestling fans don't get that. They think it's got to be so one side. You either have to be this side or this side. There is no in between. You can't look at both sides. You can't support both companies. That's not allowed. But I think it should be. And I think as you grow older and mature, you realize that it will be. But just say, oh, WWE sucks. Everything about them sucks. Well, then you better not watch them then. If it sucks that bad, because I wouldn't. But yeah, we go on here all the time. I spend plenty of nights on streams where I crap on Monday Night Raw, or crap on a pay-per-view, or crap on something they did. But I also acknowledge the good. And there is a lot of good in WWE. Same thing with AEW. They don't do everything right. I enjoy Dynamite. I think Dynamite is a fun wrestling show. It's got a good balance of wrestling and humor and good promos and, you know, and violence and things like that. It's always a nice blend. Sometimes it goes a little heavy on the comedy, and that's a little much for me. And I can say that because it's not wrong. I like AEW. I'm not going against them. You know, I'm not betraying AEW by giving them some constructive criticism or what I would like to see or prefer to see as a fan. Just to have it, you know, to be that cut and dry. Oh, everything AEW is better because they have better stories. Not all the time. Sometimes their stories suck too. You know, so just to have that just black and white opinion, I think is unhealthy. And that's why wrestling fans are at each other's throats. instead of being together on most things, because people just have too many black and white opinions. It's got to be this way. Jim Cornette is like that. Everything, he can't say one positive thing, about AEW, because if he does that, his followers are going to be like, oh my God, he's turned his back on us. No, you can be honest. Like, honesty is not against the law. I think it's just against the law in wrestling Twitter. That's all. I'm one of the few that's fair and balanced. Well, you got to be fair to Flair. If you're not fair to Flair, anyone as fair as Flair always needs to be traded fairly. Will you stop? Yeah, and you're right about that, Bruce. One of the worst problems in WWE right now is they're showing the same matches. Now, I feel like they might have heard a little bit of that message because they've got Raw this week loaded up with Nakamura and Cesaro taking on the Street Profits. Asuka and Mickie James has happened before, but it doesn't happen every week. And McIntyre taking on Keith Lee. But one thing I noticed last week on Raw, I'm like, how many weeks in a row now has like Apollo been involved with the Hurt Business? Like 10, 12 weeks in a row that those wrestlers, Apollo and Ricochet and Cedric, have all been mixed in with the Hurt Business and variations of singles matches and tag team matches. Same thing every week. Street Profits and Viking Raiders Street Profits and Angel and Andrade every single week. Every single week just keeps happening. And it's frustrating when you have a company that's got a roster of hundreds of talented wrestlers, and the best they can do is give us a match that we've seen 6 straight weeks in a row, and instead of coming up with some new stuff. I understand you're going to have storylines and stuff, and wrestlers are going to have to see each other multiple weeks in a row. I get that. But some of these matches are the same, literally the same, on every Raw, where I'm like, why the hell are we spending 3 hours watching this? Is this necessary? So this week we got McIntyre and Keith Lee. We'll see how that goes. I think it's going to be a DQ. I think Orton's going to run in. It's going to be a big schmoz, and McIntyre and Keith Lee might just take turns beating the shit out of Orton. I don't know. But either way, I seriously doubt we'd get a finish there. I suppose McIntyre would beat Keith Lee, or could beat Keith Lee, but I don't know if I even want to see that. I'd rather just see DQ. That's probably what we're going to see there. But we'll see if they try to get better with that as well. And at some point, Retribution is going to have to be revealed to us. We'll see. Right now, SmackDown, I think in the last couple of weeks, is definitely better than Raw. The last 2 SmackDowns I've really enjoyed. Last week was real good with the Sasha Banks beatdown, and last night was decent. We had some stuff go down. I liked the dynamic with Roman Reigns. I liked the little teasing they're doing with him and Jey Uso and how much damage he's going to put on him. I like the fact that they're making a storyline out of this briefcase. I like that Alexa Bliss has somehow been possessed by the Fiend, perhaps. I like Wobbly Walrus, as goofy as it is. So they're doing things, and I like, Bayley's setting up everything she'll be doing with Sasha Banks and Sami Zayn, returning as the champion, cutting great promos and being hilarious and over the top and obnoxious. That's going to lead to an awesome ladder match at Clash with Sami and Jeff and AJ and stuff. So it's not all bad. SmackDown has been decent, and I'm loving me the new Roman. Right now, it's at least in the last couple of weeks, it's far outperforming Raw easily. Raw's hard to watch, man. Thanks again, Stone Cold, for 2 more. Book Uso versus Roman like Brock versus Cena. I wouldn't even do it that much. Brock versus Cena was as much of a squash as it was still a long match. Like, it was more, I guess it could be like that. It actually could. It could be a more methodical beatdown. It just depends on how Roman wants to do it. He could just squash him, immediately pin him in 5 seconds, and then kick his ass, or he can slowly torture him throughout the match, spearing him, picking him up before the 2 count, refusing to pin him, toying with him. Like when a whale catches a sea lion or something. Like, he plays with him, he toys with him, like a killer whale in the ocean, and tosses him around and teaches the young how to hunt and stuff. They just toy with him and torture the shit out of him until they brutally kill him in the end. So I think that would be all right. But I want to see it get a little bit more violent. The Brock Cena match was a brutal squash, but it wasn't like violent. It was just German suplexes all over the place. I want to see some blood, man. That's why I think Roman should beat him and then beat his ass with a chair. And if you can get Jimmy out there, like I said earlier, depending on what his injury is and what he can do physically, if he can just hobble out there or get in crutches and stuff and somehow take some minor bumps or at least take a couple chair shots while he's laying down and have Roman just annihilate both of them, that would be great. Yeah, or Roman like playing with his food. Exactly. That's kind of what I want to see him do to Jay, do to his cousin. And then Heyman can really hammer home that point on TV. This man is a beast. This man, or maybe not the beast. This man is the big dog. Nobody can stop him. And look, if he's willing to do that to his own flesh and blood, imagine what he's willing to do to you. So I can see all that coming out. I think it'll be an excellent part of Roman's character, his heel character anyway. So anyway. Oh, man, Madeline, any early Mania predictions? I know you're supposed to go, as am I, but as every day passes, the chances of going get slimmer. I know. I'm almost kind of giving up on it. I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you at the SmackDown, the first ever SmackDown. We were both there, but we did not meet up. Maybe at WrestleMania. We'll see. Who knows? I don't know yet, man. I don't know what the hell they're going to do for WrestleMania. I'm just trying to think of how much COVID's going to affect their plans, if they're going to change anything, and if Roman remains champion all the way until WrestleMania, somebody is going to have to take that belt off of him. So who is that going to be if he holds it for that long? Who would be the one to do it? Brock? I don't know. I have no idea. Spectra, appreciate the $5. SmackDown has brought me back to watching WWE. Am I too cynical when I'm watching, waiting to be let down again, questioning why I still care? No, you're not too cynical. That's the thing. Like, there's such a thing as people being too cynical, but WWE has given us a very good reason to be cynical. I don't like to be cynical. I don't like to be negative, but WWE doesn't really help people stay positive that much because of some of the shit they shovel into our faces. It's a little bit over the top. That's why the last couple of SmackDowns have been pretty good, and they're doing all right in the Thunderdome. They're still a little, it's not great, but it's better than the Performance Center, and at least it gives you some sort of a feeling of business as usual, even though things are very, very strange right now. But we're still seeing some interesting stuff. It doesn't feel like they're on autopilot anymore. It feels like they're actually doing things, and this Roman situation is a good example of that, how they're actually turning Roman. This is a big deal. Turning Roman heel like this and everything, it's a big step for the company. So, they're definitely not phoning shit in terms of that, but it's not all good. During the first SmackDown, you were a 3-year-old baby. My God. I remember that one. I was like 22. My God. John Cena defeats Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 37. There you go, Zane. I could see that because it's for the Universal title, a belt that John Cena has not held. And what a way to break the record of Ric Flair than to win a title you've never had and have WWE put John Cena's name into that legacy. If he doesn't face Roman, possibly The Rock. I think The Rock would be another great option, but again, probably depends on what happens with WrestleMania, where it's going to be and what's going to happen and all that stuff. So COVID might rule The Rock out, but maybe not John Cena. And Cena putting down Roman Reigns, I'd be all right with it. Yeah, Paulie, we talked about that earlier. Mandy Rose has been traded to Raw, seemingly due to some strings that The Miz has pulled, and The Miz is using this as a bargaining chip, I'm sure, to help him gain control of that Money in the Bank contract. And I'm sure he will now offer Otis a chance to call in another favor. I'll get Mandy back to SmackDown if you give me your briefcase or something like that. Whatever they're doing here, it's going to lead to that, I'm sure. Oh, yeah, Barry, I meant the first SmackDown on Fox. The one with Kofi and Brock. Oh, you were there too, Crash? I'm excited to one day go back to Staples for something else whenever it's time to go do something. We'll see. Oh, yeah, I did see the Jeff Hardy teasing the Willow thing with the Fiend. I can see that. That's another reason why I think Jeff will not come out of the ladder match that I'm assuming they're going to have at Clash. He's not going to come out of that as the champion. I think it should be Sami Zayn. And then by then, you would assume that, well, I guess Roman could still face him, but he'll be done with Jey Uso. I don't know if Bray Wyatt will get a title shot against Roman first or whatever, but I'm into Willow and the Fiend. Why not? Because the Wyatt worked with Matt Hardy, so why not work with Jeff? Doing a storyline where Adam Cole is Michael Cole's or his son? No, they're not going to do. I mean, that sounds like a Vince thing on paper they're going to do, but they're not going to have Adam Cole and Michael Cole there all this time and not mention that. That's the thing that I say. I understand the criticism with Vince. But people get so mad about Vince, they start just automatically assuming that he's going to make the worst decision about every single thing. Oh, he's going to take Adam Cole and make him Michael Cole's son. No, I know Vince is out of touch and dumb, but he's not going to do that. Let's be reasonable. That's the thing. People get mad and then they just take it to a million different degrees. I'm like, come on, he's not going to do that. Vince does some dumb shit. I'm not saying he doesn't, but that's ridiculous. That won't happen. Seeing his contract expired in WWE, he's not going anywhere. He'll be back. He'll be back in the ring. Interested to see what his version of Wipeout looks like. John Cena doing Wipeout. Maybe they can do a cross promotion with the Miz's show. That might be fun. All right, anyway, it's been a nice 2.5 hour long podcast. We got in a lot of stuff. I want to appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight. It was a lot of fun. Anything I missed here or anything that happens in the next couple of days, I will talk about Monday night after Raw, so make sure you join me. Please subscribe as well if you are not subscribed, because I'm up here all the time, and then I'll definitely be up here Monday night, immediately following Raw for our review, and then hopefully by then I will have some updates for you what the schedule is going to look like in the next couple of weeks, because I will be moving, but I'm not quite sure what it's going to do yet to me and how it's going to affect me. I'm not sure yet, but hopefully I'll know a little bit more of that information so I can give you guys the heads up on Monday. So have a good rest of your Saturday night. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend as well. And I'll catch you in just a couple of days after a pretty loaded Monday Night Raw. Y'all be good. Peace.